Trial resumed. Jury not present.
The court said, "Good morning."
Mr. Ferguson said, "Good morning."
The court said, "Please make your appearances."
Mr. Ferguson said, "Good morning, Your Honor." Micah Ferguson, Juliana Murray, Justin Horton for the government. Also joined by our paralegal Isabel Loftus.
Mr. Skirick said, "Good morning, Your Honor." Scott Skirick, Sabrina Schroff, and Matt Barkin on behalf of Mr. Guo, who also joins us here at counsel's table.
The court said, "Please be seated." By letter dated June 12, 2024, the government states that it will call Samuel Roberts, the head of financial intelligence at BitGo, which provided certain services to the Himalaya exchange. The government expects that Mr. Roberts will testify about his participation in BitGo's reviews of its business relationship with the Himalaya exchange. Specifically, BitGo conducted 2 reviews: a preliminary due diligence inquiry upon beginning its business relationship with the exchange in 2021, and another more searching review after receiving a subpoena related to the exchange. As part of this second review, Mr. Roberts communicated with exchange representatives, evaluated information provided by the Himalaya exchange and from public sources, and recommended that BitGo terminate the relationship with the exchange. By letter dated June 12, 2024, the defense states that certain of Mr. Roberts's anticipated testimony about factual information he gathered may be admissible. However, the defense seeks to preclude the government from eliciting Mr. Roberts's opinions as to whether Himalaya coin and Himalaya dollar are cryptocurrencies, whether the Himalaya exchange is a cryptocurrency exchange, and the design/functions of Himalaya coin, Himalaya dollar, and the Himalaya exchange. Early this morning, the government filed a response stating that it does not intend to ask Roberts his opinion whether Himalaya coin and Himalaya dollar are cryptocurrencies, or whether the Himalaya exchange is a cryptocurrency exchange. Rather, the government represents that Roberts would be testifying about what he observed, what he was told by the exchange, and how that information impacted the review he conducted, and informed his recommendation that BitGo terminate its relationship with the exchange. To the extent that there is still a dispute between the parties, the court agrees with defendant that whether H coin and H dollar are cryptocurrencies, and whether the Himalaya exchange is a cryptocurrency exchange are questions that require scientific, technical, or other specialized knowledge within the meaning of Rule 702. Indeed, both parties have noticed experts to opine about these 2 questions. Mr. Roberts, by contrast, has not been noticed as an expert witness. Accordingly, the government shall not elicit his opinions as to these 2 topics. The court shall not broadly preclude Mr. Roberts's testimony about the design and function of Himalaya coin, Himalaya dollar, and the Himalaya exchange. He may state that he recommended that BitGo terminate its relationship based on his findings, but he may not offer general information about the characteristics of cryptocurrency, nor may he offer an opinion as to whether H coin, H dollar were cryptocurrencies and whether the exchange was a cryptocurrency exchange. Is there anything further?
Mr. Ferguson said, "One matter from the government, Your Honor. We wanted to alert the court so it's aware. We're discussing this with the defense actively. But we wanted to let the court know to back up, for context. One of the government's witnesses noticed for this week is Beau Collins. He was the CEO of Mercantile Bank. And as a refresher for Your Honor, Mercantile Bank was I think you could call it the digital bank. It was a Puerto Rico financial institution that Hamilton, the William J. entity, was going to acquire. Shortly before that acquisition, the government executed its seizure warrants on Hamilton's bank accounts. That was the seizure of the ultimately around $600 million or so. Mr. Collins was the CEO of Mercantile. The government was going to call him to testify sort of about the Himalaya exchange, was a client of Mercantile Bank and had bank accounts there. The government's going to call him to testify about that relationship and the proposed acquisition and then the ultimate seizure of the funds, which stopped the acquisition. After the acquisition, there was an arbitration between Mercantile and Hamilton. Like a private arbitration based on, to my understanding, like a contract dispute in the purchase of sale agreement. That was litigated in the arbitration. I think Mercantile won the arbitration. Ultimately filed for I don't know the correct term, a confirmation of the arbitration award in the SDNY. I'm not sure the status of that case. But the arbitration was done. We received in mid-April, we requested and then received in mid-April a production from Mercantile mid-April of this year. That was in response to our request for any testimony that Mr. Collins gave in the arbitration. We understood he had testified. We received from Mercantile I think you would call it the arbitration file. Your Honor. On quick review, it appears to be the filings by the parties in the arbitration. Perhaps some correspondence or discovery back and forth between the parties in the arbitration award, and the hearing transcript of the arbitration. I think it was a 2-day hearing. That production was mistakenly not produced to the defense, the mid-April of this year production. We learned that last night. We produced it to the defense immediately. While it was being uploaded, the government clicked through this production as fast as we could to get a sense of what is in there. That's what my understanding from that's my understanding what it is. We flagged what we thought was the most pertinent part of that for Mr. Collins, which is I believe in the arbitration they did direct testimony via affidavit and then got crossed at the hearing. So we flagged his affidavit, the other Mercantile employee affidavits we saw, and we flagged the hearing transcript. Like the Bates numbers for those, Your Honor. Unfortunately, it is a large number of pages. It's around 16,000 pages. My understanding is that is about 754 documents. I think, from my clicking through very quickly. My sense is the reason the page numbers is so much larger than the document count is. Your Honor could think of like a motion for summary judgment where a party is filing a brief to the arbitrators and attaching as exhibits. Long contracts about the arbitration and due diligence documents on Mercantile, that sort of thing. But there's very long exhibits to these filings. That's my sense, on very quick review of this. We have not determined yet, although we want to further review this to be further helpful to the defense on the contents of this production. But we had received from Mercantile prior to this very voluminous production already in response to a grand jury subpoena that had requested any and all documents related to Hamilton and specified, including any proposed merger transaction. That was our grand jury subpoena request. In response to that, they had given us previously and we had previously produced around 16,000 documents, which was around 79,000 pages. Now we have not confirmed that the exhibits to these arbitration filings are duplicative of the prior grand jury subpoena productions. Topically, they should be. But that's one thing that we want to look at to see if we can flag anything for the defense that may be new. Or anything else that, in our judgment, may be particularly pertinent to Mr. Collins's testimony or that we want to flag for them so they can take a closer look at that. As I said, we're also just generally discussing this with the defense. We're open to moving Mr. Collins's testimony to allow them more time to review this. And we don't have an agreement as to how to proceed with Mr. Collins. He is not testifying today no matter what. We're open to ideas on how best to accommodate it. We want to be efficient with the jury's time and the court's time. We're open to any number of options, including possibly, if the defense were open to this. Maybe Mr. Collins could do his direct on Friday but not get crossed until Monday. Give them additional time to review this production and his direct testimony transcript. Or even if they want us to just not call him until next week, we're open to this. We're discussing it. I just wanted to alert the court to the issue and, just as an FYI for this issue.
The court said, "Is there a table of contents for the grand jury documents and for the arbitration documents?"
Mr. Ferguson said, "There's not a table of contents, I don't believe so, Your Honor."
The court said, "Does the defense have anything to say?"
Mr. Skirik said, "Your Honor, I can only comment to this briefly. Mr. Kumraju is actually right now in the process of trying to assess these materials because, as Mr. Ferguson noted, we just got them late last night. So we're not at this point able to sort of give a substantive assessment of what we have. Obviously, we need to spend a little bit of time with it to be able to do that. But I would just note for the court, you know, that Mr. Collins was on the government's witness list that they sent us on Saturday morning. So he was noticed, you know, over the weekend, and, you know, we're just receiving this information last evening. And, you know, as I said, Mr. Kumraju I think a little bit later today will, after he's had a chance to look at it, come and address the issue in more detail. I would just flag, in addition to the logistical issues that the government has already raised about Mr. Collins's testimony, you know, the sort of parallel issue that I think we may find ourselves, depending on how we handle Mr. Collins's testimony, with additional time at the end of the day tomorrow. It remains to be seen, obviously. We would all love if that were the case, if things moved that quickly. But to the extent that we do, we don't have any notice from the government as to who else they may call at this point to take that time. So again, this is happening in real time. We haven't had that much of a chance to discuss it with the government. But I just flagged that for the court.
Mr. Ferguson said, and we appreciate that, Your Honor. And that's something else we're happy to discuss with the defense and do everything we can to try and accommodate them. You know, we can't promise there won't be mistakes, but if we learn of them, we'll try and do the right thing when we do, and that's what we're hoping to do here.
The court said, "Don't you have a bevy of folks who can be comparing the two documents while you're on trial?"
Mr. Ferguson said, I'm not sure we have a bevy, but that is our plan, Your Honor. We're going to try and do that comparison and flag anything further for the defense.
The court said, "Is there anything further?"
Mr. Ferguson said, not from the government.
Mr. Skirik said, not from the defense, Your Honor.
The court said, "All righty. We'll reconvene at 9:30. Please have the witness on the stand at 9:29.
Mr. Ferguson said, yes, Your Honor.
Recess.
The court said, "Please have the jurors brought in."
Jury present.
The court said, "Please be seated. Good morning, jurors."
The juror said, good morning.
The court said, "We're going to continue with the direct examination of the witness. Please remember that you're still under oath. You may inquire."
Mr. Ferguson said, thank you, Your Honor.
Minran Wu resumed. Direct examination continued. By Mr. Ferguson.
Good morning, Ms. Wu.
Good morning.
And Ms. Wu, when we broke yesterday, we were discussing the farm loan program. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Did you participate in the farm loan program?
Yes.
And did you send money to your farm?
Yes.
How much did you send?
$20,000.
And approximately when did you send the $20,000?
August 2020.
And where did you send the $20,000?
Mountains of Spice, LLC, something like that.
And what was the name on the account that you used to send the money to Mountains of Spices?
Wonder Invest, LLC.
And in connection with that transfer, did you sign a loan agreement?
Yes, should be.
Mr. Ferguson said, Ms. Loftus, could we show the witness what's marked as Government Exhibit VN39? Ms. Wu, is this the loan agreement?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Ferguson said, the government offers Government Exhibit VN39.
Mr. Skirik said, no objection.
The court said, "It is admitted."
Government's Exhibit VN39 received in evidence.
Mr. Ferguson said, could we please publish that? All right. And Ms. Loftus, if we could zoom on the top half just to make the text larger for everyone. That's great.
By Mr. Ferguson.
All right. Ms. Wu, do you see at the top here it says loan agreement?
Yes.
And who is the borrower on this loan agreement?
MOS Farm, Mountains of Spice Farm.
And who's the lender?
Me.
What's the date for this loan agreement?
August 12, 2020.
And under loan amount, do you see it says $20,000?
Yes.
So focusing you on the paragraph 1A, there, use of proceeds, I'll go ahead and read that paragraph.
Okay.
So it says, use of proceeds. The loan proceeds advanced under this agreement is for the general working capital purposes of the borrower. And the borrower is the farm. Right, Ms. Wu?
Yes.
Now, Ms. Wu, did you read that before or after you sent the money?
I cannot remember because at that time a lot of things just pushed together. We were so hurry and hectic, because they gave us 24 hours to 48 hours, anyway. Just a very short time to wait our bank account information, because they use several bank accounts. But they send each person different bank account. I don't know what they were. Just that we needed to wait for our own bank account. After that, we need to wire the money immediately. Because they said those bank accounts would be stopped at any time because of the CCP. And then we need to write an email to the email address they gave us, provided a lot of stuff they required. And then just after, just to send, we sent the email to the farm. We need to join a Telegram group. In that group, we needed to wait the confirmation from them about our money. So, very busy. Maybe just a little thing about the contract before send the money. But I don't think I had a lot of time to read it little by little, turn by turn.
And Ms. Wu, you explained yesterday that you understood this loan agreement was to get GTV stock. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And the use of proceeds does not mention GTV stock, right?
Yes.
What, if anything, were you told about why that was?
They said they couldn't write clearly about that in this contract, just because of the CCP. Because CCP always eyeing this group, they couldn't do that.
And who told you that?
Miles Guo said this. Xia Qidong also said this.
And remind us again what Xia Qidong's other name is.
Changdao or Changdao Vida.
What does that mean again?
Changdao means an island, Vida is great brother.
And Ms. Wu, focusing on paragraph C of this contract. Do you see it says interest rate? What was the interest rate?
They said we borrowed our money to the farm, right? The farm should give us this interest. 3% each year.
Mr. Ferguson said, and Ms. Loftus, if we could now scroll down to page 7. And Ms. Wu, did you sign this contract?
Yes.
And who else signed it?
Xia Qidong.
And now what was the date you signed the contract, Ms. Wu?
August the 12th, 2020.
And what was the date that Xia Qidong signed the contract?
November 2nd, 2021.
Over a year later?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson said, now, Ms. Loftus, if we could scroll down to page 9. Ms. Wu, do you see it says name of entity and it says Wonder Invest, LLC?
Yes.
Can you remind us, what is Wonder Invest, LLC?
It's my own company.
Mr. Ferguson said, and if we could go to the next page, Ms. Loftus, please. All right. Now, Ms. Wu, do you see this says addendum at the top?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson said, and Ms. Loftus, maybe just to make it easier to read, could we blow up the top half? Okay. I'll just go ahead and read paragraph 1. So paragraph 1 says, Provision 1A of loan agreement shall be modified as to follows. The loan proceeds advanced under this agreement may be used by the borrower at its discretion without limitation, including but not limited for working capital, political activities, loaning out to other parties, and/or investment purposes. Ms. Wu, what, if anything, did Changdao say about this addendum?
I don't remember.
Mr. Ferguson said, and if we could zoom out, please, Ms. Loftus, and go to page 12, just another couple pages down. Keep going, please. Okay. Just to focus on when the addendum was signed, Ms. Wu?
November 5th, 2021.
And that's when you signed it, correct?
Yes.
And what was the date that Xia Qidong signed this?
November 2nd, 2021.
And is that the same date that Xia Qidong signed or Changdao signed the original loan agreement?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson said, okay. Now let's go back up, Ms. Loftus. Let's go back to page 12 of the document. And I'll ask you to please zoom, if you would, on paragraph 6, please. Okay. So I'll go ahead and read paragraph 6, Ms. Wu.
Okay.
It says, the borrower shall have the right to unilaterally terminate the loan agreement if the lender has committed or commits the following. A. Lender defames, libels, insults, humiliates, abuses, curses verbally or in writing, in public or secrecy, Mr. Wanguigwa aka Milesqua. B. Lender makes any statements or engages any conducts that are against the missions of the whistleblower movement, WM. For the purpose of this loan agreement, WM is defined as a combination of campaigns, actions, and platforms,
including GTV, designated to disclose the criminal activities of Chinese Communist Party, CCP, and spread the truth about CCP's atrocity for the purpose of achieving the total and complete destruction of the CCP. Or, C. Lender makes any statements or engages any activities that are against the missions of the new Federal State of China, NFSC. For the purpose of this note, NFSC is a semi-state sovereignty created and initiated by Mr. Milesqua and supported by anti-CCP communities on June 4, 2020 at New York with the mission of establishing a new China without CCP to promote the universal ideas of rule of law, freedom, and democracy to Chinese people. Ms. Wu, we discussed the original loan agreement. At the time you received the loan addendum in November 2021, did you read the addendum before signing it?
No.
Why didn't you read the addendum before you signed it?
At that time actually, I already thought about ask to refund.
And why did considering asking for a refund, why did that affect whether you read the contract? Or the addendum? Excuse me.
This was in November, right? Actually, I began to doubt this organization from April or May 2021. Because at that time SEC published the settlement with the GTV, so I went to the website. Read that documentation, then I felt something not right, also some other things together.
And we'll talk about those things in a few minutes, Ms. Wu.
Okay.
Mr. Ferguson said, Ms. Loftus, if we could just zoom out and go back to page 12, I'm sorry. Page 14. Excuse me. So Ms. Wu, could you explain why, if at the time you were considering asking for a refund? Why you still signed this addendum?
If I didn't do this, I definitely would no chance to ask a refund.
And why do you say that?
First, I heard a lot of people said if they asked a refund, then they maybe, just maybe I cannot guarantee. Because I heard people said a lot of people already was expelled from their farms because of their refund request. Then,
Mr. Skirik said, Your Honor, objection to the hearsay.
The court said, sustained.
Mr. Ferguson said, it's being offered for the effect of why she signed the addendum, Your Honor. Not for the truth of the out-of-court statement.
The court said, in that case then the answer stands.
By Mr. Ferguson.
I'm sorry, Ms. Wu. You were explaining why you signed the addendum even though you were thinking about asking for a refund.
And then I just thought I needed a safe way to do this. I hadn't defined a way at that time. Then I had to sign this first, and later, I think I will do something.
When you say do something, what do you mean?
Find a perfect opportunity to do this.
And when you say do this, what are you referring to, Ms. Wu?
Ask for a refund.
And we'll talk about it later, but did you ultimately ask for a refund from the farm loan?
Yes.
Okay. We'll turn to that in a moment. Ms. Wu, what, if any, volunteer work did you do related to farm loan transfers?
In the group. Just the farm, the MOS farm established the group to do the translation job for documentations needed in a lawsuit.
And who was the lawsuit between?
Between MOS farm and the Phoenix farm.
And who was in charge of the Phoenix farm?
At that time should be Sarah Wei.
Now could you explain what sorts of documents were shared in the chat group that was created by MOS for this? At a high level. What sorts of documents were shared in that group?
Just all kinds of loan project from I don't know if all farms, but definitely from various farms of the world.
And who would send these documents to the chat group?
Zhang Yongbing and Xia Qidong were in charge of this group. Zhang Yongbing and his assistant distributed this documentation to us to do the translation.
Mr. Ferguson said, Ms. Loftus, could we please publish what's in evidence as Government Exhibit 121? If we could publish it. Ms. Wu, who is this?
This is Zhang Yongbing.
And what was his role at the MOS farm?
He was the legal group leader in the MOS farm at that time.
And what was his position in the farms after that?
After that, he was ascended to the Himalaya Alliance and then to the Iron Blood Group.
Was.
The court said, does he go by any other name?
The witness said, Zhang Yongbing is his real name. His called name is Tanggong Chi Xia, Ph.
And Ms. Wu, could you spell Zhang Yongbing for the court reporter?
Zhang Yongbing. ZhangYongbing.
You said, Ms. Wu, he ascended to the Himalaya Alliance and the Iron Blood Group. What's the Iron Blood Group?
It should be the core of this organization, and all members are Miles Guo's helpers.
Mr. Ferguson said, all right. Ms. Loftus, if we can now show just the witness what's marked as Government Exhibit VN7. And Ms. Wu, you said Zhang Yongbing or his assistant shared the documents with this chat group, correct?
Yes.
Were some of the documents sent to you screenshots of text messages, Ms. Wu?
Yes.
Sorry. I didn't. Is this document now on your screen?
Yes.
Is this one of the documents that Zhang Yongbing or his assistant shared with the chat group?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson said, the government offers Government Exhibit VN7.
Mr. Skirik said, Your Honor, voir dire.
The court said you may. Voir dire examination.
By Mr. Skirik.
Ms. Wu, you didn't create this document, did you?
No.
Do you know when the document was created?
No.
Do you know who created it? And to be clear, I'm asking who created the document. Not who were what are the names of the people that show up in the document?
I don't know. Should be the Iron Blood Group people.
But you don't know.
Because they do this, no others can do this.
I understand. I'm asking you what you know, not to speculate on what may have happened.
Okay. I don't know.
Mr. Ferguson said, Your Honor, she answered the question.
Mr. Skirik said, We object.
The court said, overruled. It is admitted.
Mr. Ferguson said, Could we publish this, please, Ms. Loftus?
By Mr. Ferguson.
All right. Now.
Mr. Skirik said, Your Honor, before Mr. Ferguson begins questioning, could we just have a brief sidebar?
The court said yes.
Continued on next page. At the sidebar.
Mr. Skirik said, So Your Honor. We have a continuing objection to this on the basis of hearsay and that it has Mandarin language in it. That's our objection.
Mr. Ferguson said, It's not hearsay. It was sent by an agent of Miles Guo to the MOS farm. Clearly a statement of an agent. Second, it's a screenshot of a text that Miles Guo was in. I don't see how it could be hearsay. On the Mandarin translation, I'm happy the vast majority of this is in English. I'm happy to just ask her about the English language portions. We don't have a lot of questions on this. And if we want, we can get the limited Mandarin text translated and send it to the defense. We can put that in evidence.
The court said, so this came up before. Any Mandarin needs to be translated. So you'll hold off on this and my ruling is pending, shall we say?
Mr. Ferguson said, okay. I'll just skip it.
Mr. Skirik said, Just one point, Your Honor. I believe the witness testified. Notwithstanding what Mr. Ferguson described as the province of this document. This witness testified she has no idea who created it or where it came from.
Mr. Ferguson said, that's not true. She said it was shared in a chat that was sent to her within the chat and she downloaded it from that.
Ms. Schrofa said, she never said she downloaded it in.
Mr. Ferguson said, right. If you want me to ask her.
Ms. Schrofa said, if I could just finish. She did not say she downloaded it and she did not say she created the document. We should just be clear about what the record is so far because, and we can always go back. But I don't believe there was any testimony whatsoever that she downloaded it.
Mr. Ferguson said, you're correct. I'm sorry.
The court said, but she recognizes it.
Ms. Schrofa said, I think she did say that. But she never said how that document was created, right? He asked her, who created the exhibit that's before you? So it's inaccurate to say she downloaded it.
Mr. Ferguson said, on the created, you don't have to create a document to be able to create a document. It was sent to her. I'm happy to ask her that.
The court said, so we'll wait on the translation, but to the extent you have other ones, if it was sent to her and she recognizes it, it's going to come in.
Mr. Skirik said, we're making a hearsay objection, but we understand, Your Honor.
The court said, this is the statement of conspirators, or alleged conspirators. Let's go.
Continued on next page. In open court.
The court said, you may continue.
Mr. Ferguson said, thank you, Your Honor. Okay. Ms. Loftus. Could we show the witness now what's marked as Government Exhibit VN13?
By Mr. Ferguson.
And Ms. Wu, is this another document that was shared in that chat group?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson said, Government offers Government Exhibit VN13.
Mr. Skirik said, Your Honor, voir dire.
The court said you may. Voir dire examination.
By Mr. Skirik.
Ms. Wu, again, you didn't create this document, correct?
Several people created together.
So my question was, did you create the document?
I did some.
You created some part of this document?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know if this was the final version of this document?
Can I move it?
Mr. Ferguson said, Ms. Loftus, if you want to scroll down slightly. You can keep scrolling, Ms. Loftus.
There is no grand total.
By Mr. Skirik.
Okay. Do you know what the source of this information is? Source of the information displayed in this document.
You see the file number? Those file numbers just different screenshots that Zhang Yongbing distributed to us.
I'm sorry. Could you explain that again?
The file number, that column, the file number column, MLP, all just.
Oh, file number. I see. Okay. Go ahead.
Each one stands for one screenshot. We did the translation.
Okay. And my question was, do you know what the source is of the financial information in this document?
What do you mean source? Source from the screenshots they gave us. The screenshots they asked from different farms.
Mr. Ferguson said, and was the first exhibit we looked at an example of those screenshots?
The witness said, yes.
Mr. Skirik said, Your Honor, same objection.
The court said, you received this document in the chat, correct?
The witness said, yes.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit VN13 received in evidence.
Mr. Ferguson said, thank you, Your Honor. We could publish it to the jury, just quickly. We can scroll up to the top.
By Mr. Ferguson.
So Ms. Wu, do you see in row 1 it says note in red text?
Yes.
I'll just read the note. It says, note, the following amounts have either been transferred or were confirmed by farm owners to have been transferred to Maywind. Ms. Wu. Do you recall what, in receiver column it says Maywind Trading LLC? Do you recall what that was?
Should be one of the bank or bank accounts of the Phoenix farm. It's just used to receive loan program funds from that farm members.
Mr. Ferguson said, Ms. Loftus, if we could scroll down towards the bottom, please. keep going. And Ms. Wu, do you see on this Excel it says the total is $39,872,527?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson said, all right. And Ms. Loftus, I'm sorry. If we could scroll back up quickly. Just because we covered this when the jury didn't see it. Under the column file number, the column B, Ms. Wu.
Yes.
Do you see how there's numbers with MLP in the entries beneath that column?
MLP.
Well, for example, in row 3 it says MLP 0011-7?
Yes.
Could you just explain again, while the jury can see it, what that is a reference to?
M means Maywind.
Continued on next page. By Mr. Ferguson.
These file numbers, are these references to the sorts of screenshots we looked at first?
Mr. Skirik said, objection.
The court said, sustained.
Yes.
The court said, you can't answer. The answer is stricken.
Could you explain what these are references to, Ms. Wu?
M means Maywind. L means lawsuit. P means Phoenix Farm. And that 4 numbers up these letters identify different farm. For example, 0011 just MOS Farm, Himalaya New York MOS. And 7, before this. Zhang Yongbing asked his assistant to send table to different farms to let the farm owner or related person to fill that table. That table included 10 questions, such as, when did your farm started this loan program? When did your farm send the first amount to Maywind? How much total about your loan program, etc. etc. I cannot remember all of the 10 questions. So according to each farm's answers about that table, 1. Just question 1, 2 just question 2. Here, 7, just for the question 7. The screenshot about that question 7 included some money amount or bank information and just used those information to fill this form. Also, some farms also send some related bank statement wire transfer details.
Ms. Loftus, if we could show the witness what's marked as Government Exhibit VN12.
Mr. Skirik said, Your Honor, same objection.
Mr. Ferguson said, I'll offer it in a moment, Your Honor. Is this the document that was shared in the chat group, Ms. Wu?
Yes.
And by the way, Ms. Wu, the documents that were shared in the chat group that we looked at. Did you provide these documents to the government?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson said, the government offers Government Exhibit VN12.
Mr. Skirik said, same objection.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit VN12 received in evidence. By Mr. Ferguson.
All right. Ms. Loftus, maybe we can minimize the top bar so we can see more of this Excel. And we could scroll up, if we could just scroll down slightly. Now, Ms. Wu, I want to focus you on row 37. Where it says row 0 to 35 and it gives a grand total. What's the grand total there listed in blue?
Just added together the above transfer amount.
And does that say $106,489,540?
Yes.
Now I want to scroll back up slightly, Ms. Loftus. We can just look at one example. You can go up to row 17. So, Ms. Wu, this row says the amount is $30.8 million. Do you see that?
MMHM.
And it says sender, and then there's a question mark. And then it says receiver and there's a question mark, and the receiver is Abu Dhabi. Do you see that?
Yes.
Do you know why there are question marks here?
All this information from screenshot from Sarah. And in that screenshot, Sarah just lists these 3 to Abu Dhabi LANG service, but didn't mention where from, so question mark here. But we didn't have any details, for example, bank statement, wire transfer statement to show Abu Dhabi LAG service. So question mark.
Do you know why money was sent to Abu Dhabi?
I don't know.
You can take that down, Ms. Loftus. Now, Ms. Wu. Do you know how if at all your $20,000 was spent after you sent it to the MOS farm?
I don't know.
Did you ever receive GTV stock for your loan?
No.
Did you ever receive interest payments for your loan?
No.
What, if anything, Ms. Wu, did Miles Guo say in his broadcast about using investor money for himself?
No.
What did he say?
He said nobody can touch our money, even a penny safe, all safe.
If you had known Miles Guo used investor money for personal expenses, would you have invested in the farm loan program?
Mr. Skirik said, objection.
The court said you may answer.
No.
Would you have invested in anything he promoted?
Mr. Skirik said, objection.
The court said you may answer.
No.
Ms. Wu, did there come a time as you mentioned before when you asked for a refund of the farm loan program money you sent?
September 2022.
And we'll talk about the timing, but did you get a refund?
Yes.
Did the refund include any interest?
No.
Did the refund include any GTV stock?
No.
When you requested your refund, who did you talk to about that in September 2022?
First I contact G-Series volunteer in the MOS farm. And she said she would contact Xia Qidong about this and then let me wait. I waited several weeks. Nothing happened. So I contact that volunteer again. And the volunteer said maybe Xia Qidong forgot about that. And she would ask him again. And later, Xia Qidong contacted me through email, and we talked several times. He asked some question, also let me sign a refund agreement about my bank account. And then he said he would give me a paper check, so later I got a paper check.
We'll come back to the timing of when you requested it. But let me ask, Ms. Wu, did there come a time when you sent money to G clubs?
October 2020.
How much did you send to G clubs?
10,000.
Where did you send that money?
G Clubs Operating, LLC.
And what was the name on the account that you used to send the money to G Club?
Joint account.
And, Ms. Wu, why did you send $10,000 to G Club?
GTV stock.
Why would you think you would get GTV stock by sending money to G Clubs?
Miles Guo said.
Where did Miles Guo say that?
In his video, maybe several videos.
Did you get GTV shares?
No.
What benefits, if any, did you get from your G Clubs membership?
I didn't get anything.
What's G Fashion, Ms. Wu?
Miles Guo created that website to sell fashion such as clothes, jewelry.
And what connection, if any, was there between G Fashion and G Clubs?
If you have G Club membership, you can get some kind of discount when you make purchase of G Fashion.
Did you ever buy G Fashion?
No.
Why not?
I don't like it, not my style, and ridiculously expensive.
So, Ms. Wu, why did you pay $10,000 for a G Clubs membership?
GTV stock.
Mr. Skirik said, objection, asked and answered.
The court said, overruled.
Ms. Wu, did you ever request a refund of the money you sent to G Clubs?
Yes.
Around when did you do that?
December 2022.
You mentioned you requested a refund of the farm loan in September 2022 earlier?
Yes.
Why did you wait until December of 2022 to ask for G Club refund?
Before the G Club refund request, actually, I asked for H-Coin refund.
And so what was the timing? If you could walk us through the timing of your refund request. And we'll talk about H-Coin in a moment.
I felt loan program may be the easiest one to ask for refund, so I did it first.
And why did you think the farm loan program would be easiest?
Before I heard Xia Qidong was under government investigation and more investigation put on him. And I got a chance to translate some emails among Xia Qidong and some other MOS members. In those emails, they discuss about the loan program refund. At that time in those emails Xia Qidong behave a little reasonable. So I felt a good sign for me to go ahead.
And why didn't you ask for refunds from all the investment projects at the same time?
I was afraid they'd just expel me from the farm, I would got nothing.
And why were you concerned about being expelled from the farm for asking for refunds?
They do this. They did this a lot.
What did alliance members call people who were expelled from the farms that way after asking for refunds?
Mr. Skirik said, objection.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
CCP spy.
Ms. Wu, to bring you back to the G Club's refund request, how did you request your G Club's refund?
I asked the farm first, but the farm said none of their business. I should go to G Clubs to ask them. So I log on G Club and ask the online agent. Then G Club send me email to let me fill a refund request form. I filled it and submitted it, and nothing happened till now.
How often, if at all, were you emailing G Clubs?
In about a year, I wrote to them every day.
Did you ever get an answer?
Machine answers.
Do you recall what the machine answer said?
Our staff will review your request, something like that.
Ms. Wu, did you ever get your G Club's money, the $10,000 back?
No.
Did you ever get, for this money transfer, did you ever get any shares in GTV or any other company?
No.
Ms. Wu, what was the H-coin quota?
It is complicated formula to calculate the number of H-coins you should get according to your previous investment, including your Rule of Law Foundation donation.
What was the price of each H-coin in someone's H-coin quota?
10 cents each coin.
Ms. Loftus, if we could show the witness what's marked as Government Exhibit VN 37. What's this document? Ms. Wu?
H-coin agreement.
Mr. Ferguson said, the government offers Government Exhibit VN 37.
Mr. Skirik said, no objection.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit VN 37 received in evidence.
Is this your H-coin agreement, Ms. Wu?
Yes.
Which farm was it with?
MOS farm.
And Ms. Loftus, if we could zoom on the middle paragraph there, the larger paragraph. I'm not going to read the entirety of the paragraph, Ms. Wu, but how many H-coins were you in your H-coin quota?
44,500.
And what was the price of each of those H-coin?
10 cents each.
If we could zoom out and go to page 6, Ms. Loftus, please.
Yes. Did you sign this document, Ms. Wu?
What was the date you signed it?
October 28, 2021.
Who else signed it?
Xia Qidong.
Let's zoom out, Ms. Loftus. And if we can go back up slightly to page 2. And if we could zoom on paragraph 5 through the bottom. I'll just read a little bit of this, Ms. Wu. It says, a material term of this letter of agreement is that you hereby irrevocably consent fully and indefinitely complying with the following warranties and undertakings. You warrant and confirm that you are a member of the HF. And therefore subscribe to the rules and ideology of the HF. And we can zoom out, go to page 3, please. If we could zoom on the 1 through 4 Roman numerals. I'll read these, Ms. Wu. You undertake to not taking any action, endorsing any action or facilitating any action. Whether directly or indirectly anything which is intended to or goes against the core values and ideals of HF. I'll skip ahead a little bit and reading 2. It says, you undertake to not take any action and skip ahead slightly which is intended to or could potentially hurt or damage the mission and ideology of HF. Number 3 says, you undertake to not demonstrate skip ahead a little bit any support or benefit in any form to the Chinese Communist Party or CCP or any CCP officials. Number 4 says, you undertake to not take any action skipping ahead which is intended to or could potentially hurt or damage the reputation or operation of the exchange. Ms. Wu, what's your understanding of what these means?
Nonsense.
I'm sorry, Ms. Wu.
I feel this is nonsense. I don't understand why write these terms.
What's your understanding of what happens if you criticize the movement?
Mr. Skirik said, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
If we could zoom out. If we could go back down to the signature page, page 6. Now, Ms. Wu. You signed this October 28, 2021. Did you send money to pay for your H-coin quota?
Actually, I paid for the H-coin in April 2021. I don't remember if I remember correctly. I don't remember at that time I had this agreement.
And about how many did you pay in April 2021?
Less than $5,000.
Did you send withdrawn? We can go ahead and take this down for now, Ms. Loftus. Where did you send your a little less than $5,000 for the H-coin quota?
They gave me a personal account to send my money into.
When you say they gave you, who gave you the personal account?
Volunteer, G-Series volunteer.
And what was the name on the account that you used to send the H-coin quota money?
I don't remember, joint account or my own account.
Ms. Wu, why didn't you send the H-coin quota money directly to the Himalaya Exchange?
They didn't give us any account related to Himalaya Exchange.
What was the Alliance Foundation?
They said later, very later. Just this is the foundation to hold our H-coins and do the digital currency operation to get better profit for us.
And did you, as a general matter, Ms. Wu, what's your understanding of who could invest directly? Buy H-coins directly through the Himalaya Exchange?
Should be farm members who are not in America and Japan, maybe Canada. I don't remember. But definitely USA and Japan.
What, if any, commissions did you have to pay by not sending money directly to Himalaya Exchange?
5%.
Where would that 5% commission go?
I don't know.
Ms. Wu, why did you send this money in April 2021 to buy the H-coin quota?
Miles Guo said that this digital currency would be the leading digital currency in the world in the future. At that time, already many countries including famous financial institutions may interested in or may already bought those H-coins for themselves. So take your seats. This your chance, and then they used our previous investment to calculate the quota, so why not?
When you used the phrase take your seats, that's something Miles Guo said. What was your understanding of what take your seats meant? What are you referring to?
Not everyone has this chance. You are so lucky to have this chance, so you cannot lose it anyway because you will never have this chance in your life anymore.
What, if anything, did Guo say about H-coins and gold?
Excuse me.
What, if anything, did Guo say about H-coins and gold?
He said Himalaya Exchange has 20% gold as the reserve.
And was this 20% gold reserve important to you?
Yes.
Could you explain to the jury why that was important to you?
First, if financial institution has this ability to buy 20% gold as the reserve, this institution's financial ability should be very good. And second, I have the impression that many banks in the world, including Federal Reserve, they all have gold as their reserve, so this sounds so formal.
Ms. Wu, did you ever have an account at the Himalaya Exchange?
No.
To your knowledge, were there ever H-coins held in your name or your account on the Himalaya Exchange?
No.
Did you ever request that your H-coin quota money be returned?
Yes.
And around when did you do that?
After the loan program refund, about October 2022.
Did you get that money back?
Most part after almost half year.
And how much money did you receive back approximately?
4,500, around that.
Did you get back the 5% commission?
No.
Did Miles Guo pay back what you lost?
No.
Ms. Wu, you said at the beginning of your testimony you're no longer a follower of Miles Guo. What caused you to have doubts about the movement?
First, the SEC, the settlement of GTV. Before SEC declared this, Miles Guo and his helpers never mentioned anything about this. Then the translation for that lawsuit. I got so many screenshots show so many things. For example, Sarah Wei opened more than 170 bank accounts. I just felt so weird about this. Is that normal? I don't know. Because at this time, I still trusted Miles Guo and this organization, but I just felt some kind of a weird things here. Also before that I already felt not that free speech inside this group. People shouldn't criticize Miles Guo and people around him, close to him. You should be careful about what you said and what you wrote. So then later, I just heard government begin to investigate some people, such as Xia Qidong. Also, they were so reluctant to sign back these contracts to us, although those contracts have a lot of flaws inside. I don't know why. So little by little. They send people to protest in front of homes and workplaces of those people who criticize Miles Guo with invoking pictures and language. Sometimes it turned to violence. Some people were sent to hospital because of this. Also, Miles Guo just used volunteers to death. I don't know why. Just the moments after moments, events by events. Never stopped. Just left you no time to think others, no time to get touch with others. I heard Miles Guo said by himself in his video. One volunteer was sent to hospital because of the overstress of the volunteer work. But Miles Guo said we shouldn't like CCP, just the manner of abusing people. This kind of abusing. I don't know why. Just volunteer, right? Why so hard? Also for H coins. They said this would be the most secured digital currency in the world. One day they said, millions or tens of millions H coins disappear, missing. They couldn't locate them, okay. Also, for the H coin lockup. Before they promised for us who put those H coins into famous digital currency institution. We could redeem our H coins at any time as long as that institution already have our coins at least 6 months. Never happened. Actually, several months later. I don't remember exact time Miles Guo said they needed to lock our H coins at least 3 years. Nobody can touch it. And before the arrest of Miles Guo, one Iron Blood group member said we needed to lock up our H coins maybe at least 10 years. A lot of other things. Just little by little.
Ms. Wu, to go back to a couple of things you said. One thing was the H coin. Just so we understand the last thing you were discussing, what was the H coin lockup?
Just they didn't want people to get their money back from H coin. This is my understanding. So they don't want you touch H coin. You cannot get any money from them.
You also mentioned free speech and protest. What sorts of protests did you watch?
I didn't watch it, just listen to what they said about this protest. For example, SEC protest. One person who criticized Miles Guo a lot who is in Canada, they protest 3 times. Each time, 10 days, 20 days. I don't remember exactly. And they using a lot of invoking pictures, also including neighbors, friends, family.
And what, if anything, did the alliance say about people or call people who were being protested?
Mr. Skirik said, asked and answered.
The court said. Overruled. You can answer.
You mean Miles Guo call them?
Yeah, what did Miles Guo call them?
CCP spy.
And what effect did these sorts of this about CCP spies? What effect did that and the protest have on your doubts?
Mr. Skirik said, objection, asked and answered.
The court said. Overruled. You may answer.
Why so many CCP spies around us? I don't know. I feel that's ridiculous.
Now, Ms. Wu, did Miles Guo ever talk about being targeted by the CCP?
Yes.
What sorts of things did he say?
He said he was okay. He said the CCP wanted to kill him. He said CCP arrest his family and almost to him, but he escaped it. He said CCP seized his property, his assets. Something like that.
Ms. Wu, if it were true that Miles Guo was targeted by the CCP, does that change your view of the investment projects?
No.
Does it change your view of the movement?
No.
Why doesn't it change your view?
This movement just a scam. I don't think it's related anything to the CCP. Also, if somebody is anti-CCP, it doesn't mean this guy could scam somebody else. That's different things. You cannot use this anti-CCP to do something illegal.
What do you mean by that?
Just, for example, you scam money, now you said you scam money for anti-CCP. I just cannot understand. If you anti-CCP and you scam money, you think you better than the CCP?
Ms. Wu, overall did you make money or lose money from your investment?
I lost some.
How much did you lose approximately?
Around $15,000.
Did Miles Guo personally pay back the $15,000?
Mr. Skirik said, objection.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
No.
Did you ever ask him one-on-one to do that?
No.
Were you ever in one-on-one communication with him?
No.
Ms. Wu, sitting here today, are you still anti-CCP?
Yes.
Do you still trust Miles Guo?
No.
Why not?
Mr. Skirik said, asked and answered, Your Honor.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
He just a liar. He's very good at acting and cheating, but I feel he's not honest, reliable, credible. Not a decent guy to be trusted in any way.
Mr. Ferguson said, no further questions.
The court said, cross-examination.
Cross-examination. By Mr. Skirik.
Ms. Wu, you were born in China, is that right?
Yes.
You came to the U.S. in 2001.
Yes.
And you have a postgraduate degree in computer science, right?
Yes, master.
A master's in computer science. So you worked as a computer programmer?
Yes.
And are you retired now?
I retired myself.
Fair enough. And when did you retire?
2010.
And your husband, he still works?
Yes.
And he works as a computer programmer?
Yes.
And where does he work?
A medicine company.
That's okay. I'll move on. You said you first heard of Miles Guo in 2018, right?
Yes.
Because you saw some of his videos online.
Yes.
And that was on YouTube.
Yes.
And I believe you testified that in 2020 you started watching Mr. Guo's videos just about every day.
From 1-2 times a week to every day, not from the beginning every day.
Okay. But up to a point every day.
Yes.
And is it fair to say that his videos were anti-CCP in 2020?
He said something about CCP badness, that's it, and some kind of a gossip inside the CCP.
Right. The gossip you refer to is, he was exposing what he believed were some of the secrets of the CCP. Right.
Yes.
And now you were already anti-CCP before you were introduced to Mr. Guo's videos, right?
At that time actually I maybe inside was, but I didn't realize that clearly.
And you had done some of your own research on the Chinese Communist Party around this time, right?
The court said around what time?
Mr. Skirik said, around 2020, Your Honor.
Actually before that, from my family's history and experience, I already notice a lot about that. That is why when I watched Miles Guo video, I thought he said something true.
And your family experience was partially based on the fact that your parents were ill, right?
My parents' illness, you mean?
Yes.
Not only about that.
Well, in part is my question.
Yes.
And you felt that they were not treated well in China when they were ill, right?
Yes.
And that was part of why you became anti-CCP even in your mind, if not in action, right?
Yeah, part.
What was the other part?
My family's history.
And when you say your family history, do you mean something different than your parents' illness?
Yes.
Can you tell us what you mean by that?
My father was sacrificed in fighting of the CCP when he was young.
Okay. Now, when you began participating in the movement, do you understand what I mean by the movement?
Rules of law movement?
Yes.
Okay.
When you began participating in the movement, you didn't expect that your participation would lead to the overthrow of the CCP, right?
Miles Guo said.
I'm asking, ma'am, what you thought, what you believed.
If can do that, good. If cannot, at least do something.
Did you believe that your participation would overthrow the CCP?
Maybe.
Did you believe that the rules of law movement could overthrow the CCP?
Maybe.
Okay. Fair enough. But you didn't necessarily expect that it would overthrow the CCP, right?
Anything possible, so who knows?
My question is, you didn't necessarily expect that to be the case.
The court said. Asked and answered. Move on.
In fact, you recall telling the government that you participated because you thought it would help wake people up, correct?
At this time, yes.
Help them to wake up to how the CCP operates.
At least to let people know more.
Sure. And help them understand the truth, right?
Yes.
Now do you still have family in China?
You mean close family, not relatives?
Any family?
Cousin, uncle, something like that.
And how about your husband, does he have family in China as well?
Yes.
Do you speak with them? Are you in touch with them?
My husband's family, actually they have dialect I could not understand. Their language. I could not understand. They have some dialects.
Have you visited anyone in China since you left in 2001?
2001, yes.
And when did you return to China?
I went there a lot of times.
You visited a lot of times.
Yes.
I just want to go through them. Tell me when you visited.
Almost every year.
About once a year since 2001.
Yes. Maybe not the first 2 years, but after that.
And so in the year 2000, you visited at least one.
2000?
I'm sorry, 2020.
Not COVID-19. I mean before COVID-19.
Before COVID-19. Okay. Fair enough. In 2019, you visited at least once.
Yes.
Was it more than once?
Sometime more than once.
And how about since COVID, have you been back?
Since?
MMHM.
My father dead. I don't want to go back.
So you haven't been back since COVID?
Yes.
In preparation for your testimony here today, you met with the government lawyers and agents on a number of occasions, right?
Several times.
Several times.
Yes.
Do you remember how many times?
I didn't count it.
Well, let's see if we can bill out a list. Do you recall having a telephone interview with the FBI at the end of November of 2022?
2022, maybe. I cannot remember the time.
Do you remember when the first time was that you spoke to members of the FBI or the Department of Justice?
I don't remember, but, yes.
Approximately 2022.
Yeah, 2022, I don't remember the time.
End of 2022.
You mean twice?
Meaning toward the end of 2022.
Maybe.
How about in January of 2024?
What happened?
I'm asking you, did you meet with representative of the U.S. government?
Maybe.
Mr. Fergensen here who questioned you earlier today by WebEx.
I don't remember, January or February. I'm not sure.
What about in April of 2024, did you have an in-person interview with Mr. Fergensen?
You mean online?
No, an interview with him in person.
Face to face?
Either way.
Yes.
And then again in mid-May, May 17th.
Mid-May 17?
MMHM.
Face to face, in person?
Either way, ma'am. We'll just say any kind of meeting, whether it was virtual.
I just remember.
Just let me finish. Whether it's an in-person meeting or virtual meeting or phone call. That's what I mean by meeting with the government.
I don't remember May 17th, no.
You don't remember meeting with them in May.
I met Mr. Ferguson in May. I can't remember that time, because we met May 26th. That's just around Memorial Day, so I can remember that.
That was my next fixed question. So, fine, you met with him then. And then again on June 11th, right? 2 days ago.
Today 13? Yes.
And then again yesterday in preparation for testimony.
Yesterday?
Did you meet with him yesterday?
Said hello, is that kind of a meeting?
That I think would qualify as a meeting. You said hello.
Yes. When you just meet somebody say hello, that's still normal.
Great. That's a total of 7 meeting, right?
I don't know. If you say 7, okay 7. I did not count it.
Either way you met with him on numerous occasions, right?
Numerous, no, several times.
Okay. And in addition during the time that you met with him, and even before. You forwarded the government numerous emails, right?
Several, should not be numerous.
About how many would you say?
I don't remember.
You don't remember, but it was several, not numerous.
You see, you cannot submit as many. You can't because they limit the size and the number you can submit. So definitely not numerous.
Okay. So you forwarded this information to try to help them, right?
Help everybody.
You forwarded the information to try to help the U.S. government, right?
Mr. Ferguson said, asked and answered.
The court said, well, you've gone from him to the U.S. government, so you may answer.
I think help everybody.
Are you helping Miles Guo?
Yeah.
You are.
Just make him stop to do something bad.
Okay. Noted. Now, you testified on direct about making an investment in GTV, right?
Through VOG.
And you invested $14,000, right?
Yes.
And that was an investment with Sarah Wei, right?
Yes.
And this wasn't the first time that you had purchased stock, right?
Can I just understand, Sarah Wei kind of brokerage, stock brokerage? If this way, this is the first time.
My question was different. This wasn't the first time that you purchased stock, right? You have other investments. You have other stock investments, right?
Purchase online, yeah.
Now, you knew that there was some risk associated with purchasing a stock, right?
Yes.
Every investment has some risk, right?
Yes.
And, in fact, even Mr. Guo, you recall him saying that investing is always a little risky, right?
But he also said he guarantee every penny.
I would like you to listen to my question.
Mr. Ferguson said, Your Honor, she's answering the question.
Mr. Skirik said, it's non-responsive, Your Honor.
The court said, just stick to the question and don't offer additional question.
Mr. Skirik said, could we please have the court reporter read back the question?
Record was read.
The court said, you may answer.
As far as I can remember, he said this very late, not at the very beginning.
But he said it, right, you remember him saying it.
He asked about our investment. At that time he didn't say this.
Okay. Now, you never spoke with Mr. Guo directly about your investment before you made it, right?
Yes.
You only communicated with Sarah Wei, right?
Yes.
Or people who worked for her, right?
Yes.
And, in fact, you sent your $14,000 to Ms. Wei, right?
Yes.
And as you testified to on direct, I believe you sent it in a few different transactions.
Yes.
And those transactions were between approximately May 21st and 29th, 2020, right?
Yes.
And some of those transfers were in fact to Ms. Wei's personal bank account, correct?
She gave that account to me.
She gave you that account and you sent it to her.
Yes.
And some were to a VOG bank account, right?
Yes.
And the ones that went to the VOG bank account, again to be clear, Ms. Wei told you to send those there. Right.
Yes.
Now Mr. Guo didn't provide any specifics about where to send that money, right?
Yes.
All the specific instructions came from Ms. Wei.
But Ms. Wei and a lot of other guys, they made a lot of videos in which they said, it was Miles Guo who gave us this opportunities, so we should show our gratitude to Miles Guo forever. And Miles Guo will create more similar opportunities for US to invest in later.
Mr. Skirik said, Your Honor, move to strike as non-responsive.
The court said, so once again, if you listen carefully to the question and only answer what is being asked. So if he asks you what is your favorite color, then you can answer whatever it is, blue, red, yellow. But you wouldn't say, and my favorite flower is the rose. Don't add additional information. So the prior answer is stricken.
All the specific instructions about where to send money came from Sarah Wei, right?
Yes.
Now, do you recall when the GTV private placement closed?
June.
June 2nd.
I don't remember.
Can we just please pull up what's in evidence as Government Exhibit C9 and go to the June 2nd, 2020 entry? I believe it's page 6. Now, Ms. Wu, do you see what's displayed in the screen in front of you?
You mean the picture?
Correct.
Yes.
Do you recognize that as a screen capture from a video?
Miles Guo.
Do you recognize that as a screen capture from a video?
Maybe, yes.
Do you recognize this as a video that Mr. Guo posted when the GTV private placement ended in June of 2020?
I don't remember that date, but he did that.
But you do recall this video?
Yes.
You recall seeing a video?
Maybe the same, maybe the same. I'm not sure, but yes.
Now, you testified earlier that during this period you were watching Mr. Guo's videos pretty regularly. Right.
Yes.
So you recall seeing this video. Do you believe you saw it around the time that it was posted?
You said June 2nd, but I don't remember. I just remember in June.
So, ma'am, I'm not asking you about the specific date. My question is, do you remember seeing it around the time that it was posted?
Yes.
Thank you. We can take that down. Now. You testified that you were refunded 92% of the $14,000 that you sent to Sarah Wei, is that right?
From SEC, yes.
I want to go back to Sarah Wei for a second. Can you tell us who is Sarah Wei?
She is the earliest, maybe, I'm not sure. But from my understanding, she is the earliest person who cooperated with Miles Guo.
And did a time come when Sarah Wei had a falling out with Mr. Guo?
2021, I guess. I cannot remember exactly. That is why there was that lawsuit MOS farm to Phoenix.
Thank you. We'll get there in a second. So you do recall a time when they had a falling out?
Approximately, not exactly.
Again, ma'am, I'm not asking you the exact time. I'm just asking you if you recall that they had a falling out.
Yes.
Now, I believe you just started to talk about a lawsuit that resulted from that falling out, correct?
The lawsuit you mean result from a fallen breakup?
From the breakup, yes, that followed the breakup.
Yes, follow.
And that was a lawsuit that the farms brought against Sarah Wei and her farm, right?
Sarah Wei, at that time, already broke up with Miles Guo. So I'm not sure if Miles Guo at that time still keep her at that farm leader.
Mr. Skirik said, Your Honor, move to strike as non-responsive.
Mr. Ferguson said, Your Honor, I think she's trying to answer it very carefully but answering the question.
Mr. Skirik said, Your Honor, the answer is totally not responsive to the question.
The court said, the answer is stricken.
The lawsuit was brought by the farms against Sarah Wei's farm and Sarah Wei.
Yes.
Now, you're aware that the Mountain of Spices farm, MOS farm, I believe you referred to it on direct, sued Sarah Wei for stealing funds that supporters had put into the farm loans program, right?
Should be.
Yes.
Yes.
And that lawsuit was in 2021, right?
Yes.
And where was that lawsuit, if you remember?
I think Texas.
And you provided translation services to the MOS farm in support of that lawsuit, right?
Yes.
And the result of that lawsuit, withdrawn. You're aware of the result of that lawsuit?
No.
So you're not aware that the result of that lawsuit was a default judgment against Ms. Wei?
No, but I.
Mr. Ferguson said, "Objection, Your Honor." She said she doesn't know.
The court said, asked and answered.
Mr. Skirek said, Your Honor, I believe she was still in the process of answering it. It may have jogged her recollection.
Mr. Ferguson said, "That's not correct." She said no.
The court said, the answer was no.
Now, you were asked some questions about some government exhibits by Mr. Ferguson earlier today, right?
Today, no.
You don't recall testifying on direct and being shown those spreadsheets?
Oh, you mean here, yes.
Yes, here, today just a few minutes ago. Okay. Now, did you have an agreement with the MOS farm to provide translation services in connection with that lawsuit against Ms. Wei?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson said, "Your Honor, may we have a sidebar?"
The court said, all righty. Step up.
Continued on next page. At sidebar.
Mr. Ferguson said, "I'm not sure where this line of questioning is going, but the reason for my request, Your Honor, is the witness signed an NDA with the MOS farm. And I assume, but I just wanted to confirm. We're not going anywhere where Mr. Skirek is going to suggest she's going to get sued or retaliated against for breaching the NDA. I assume that's not the case. I don't know where we're going with it."
Mr. Skirek said, You assume correct. That's not where I'm going with this.
The court said, okay.
Continued on next page. In open court, jury present.
The court said, you may continue.
By Mr. Skirek.
So that agreement that you had with the MOS farm was to provide translation services, right?
Yes.
And it was to provide translation services in support of the MOS farm's lawsuit against Ms. Wei.
Yes.
And that's why you had access to the spreadsheets that you testified about earlier today, right?
Yes.
Now, if we could please bring up Government Exhibit GXVN 12. If we could scroll up a little, please. Or down. That's fine. Thank you. Now, Ms. Wu. You recognize this as the document that you looked at a few minutes ago when Mr. Ferguson was asking you questions.
Yes.
And I'd like to just focus you on the line 17 that Mr. Ferguson focused you on, where there's a reference to Abu Dhabi.
Yes.
You see that?
Yes.
Now, you don't know that any money was actually sent to Abu Dhabi, right?
From that screenshot, the money amount on that screenshot.
My question is, you don't know yourself that money was actually sent to Abu Dhabi, right?
We just do the calculation, so I don't know.
Right. You just did the translation, right?
Calculation here, calculation for the number.
Sure. Now, there's also a question mark next to Abu Dhabi, right?
Yes.
Do you know why that's there?
Because Sarah didn't provide us the detail, just that screenshot for the amount and the destination.
So you didn't have the details, and we don't know if money was actually sent to Abu Dhabi, right?
Mr. Ferguson said, "Objection to form."
The court said, compound question. If you want to break it up.
So you didn't have the details, right?
At least I haven't. I don't know others.
Right. You didn't have the details, right?
Yes.
The court said, asked and answered.
And the whole point of putting together this information that's in this spreadsheet was to support the lawsuit against Ms. Wei. right?
Yes.
And the other spreadsheets that we looked at were also for the purpose of supporting the lawsuit against Ms. Wei. Right.
Yes.
Because she had been accused of taking the money, right?
Yes.
Mr. Skirek said, Your Honor, I was going to move to another topic. This may be a good stopping point if we're doing 11:30.
The court said, we're going to go to noon.
Mr. Skirek said, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that.
By Mr. Skirek.
We can take that down. Now, you testified earlier today that you were a member of the MOS farm, right?
Yes.
And approximately when did you join the MOS farm?
Maybe May or June 2020.
And that farm was located here in New York, right?
Yes.
And at the time you joined in May or June of 2020, you began doing volunteer work, right?
Yes.
And you did the translation work that we just talked about.
Not this one at the beginning.
What kind of work did you do at the beginning?
There was a translation group in the farm, so I joined that group to do some news translation they ask it.
Any other kinds of volunteer work?
Modify some other people's articles.
And were there other people doing volunteer work?
You mean what other?
Other members of the farm doing volunteer work?
A lot of, yeah.
A lot of people. What kinds of volunteer work were other people doing?
Video.
Video recording.
Just like media. They also had workout group. I don't know what they do, just workout, some exercises. Workout group, religion group, patrol group. Just to do patrol to see if somebody said something not good, just delayed or maybe expel from other farm.
The court said, what was the name of that group?
The witness said, Patrol.
The court said, how do you spell that?
The witness said, Patrol.
The court said, patrol.
The witness said, Patrol.
And financial group, legal group, education group.
And what did the education group do?
Educate people.
Can you explain that any further?
I don't know. I don't know that group, what they were doing. I don't know.
Anything else?
Writing, but the writing is not like any other group, just a lot of groups had writing group inside.
Makes sense. Now, a time came as you testified on direct that you made a loan to the farm, right?
Yes.
And that was in August of 2020.
Yes.
For $20,000, right?
Yes.
And Mr. Fergensen showed you the loan agreement, right?
Yes.
So if we could just pull up that loan agreement GXVN 39. Now. You testified that you can't recall if you read the loan agreement before you signed it, right?
I really don't remember because it's so hurry at that time. I read it long time ago.
Sure. But you can't recall whether it was before or after that you read it, right?
Yeah.
So it's possible that you read it before, right?
The court said, don't ask her to speculate.
Mr. Skirek said, it's a logical conclusion.
The court said, don't testify.
You also testified that you recall Mr. Guo saying at some point that the proceeds from these loans would go to purchase GTV stock. Right.
Yes.
Now, don't you recall that he said that after you signed this agreement?
I don't remember, that long time ago.
Now. Isn't it true you recall Mr. Guo saying that the money loan through the loan program was for the farm?
He said interest to the farm. I don't know what does that mean, just I remember it like this.
Mr. Skirek said, Your Honor, move to strike as non-responsive.
The court said, well, I think the first sentence is responsive with respect to interest, and so the second part will be stricken.
Now. You recall telling the government that you understood that the farm could use the money in any project it wanted. Right.
Xia Qidong said that.
My question is, do you recall telling the government that that was your understanding?
I don't remember.
Okay. Let's see if we can refresh your recollection. Can we put up for the parties and the witness 3620-10? Page 3. Now, Ms. Wu. If you could just read what's in front of you or should be in front of you momentarily to yourself, not out loud. And let me know when you're done.
Yes.
Does that remind you that that is in fact what you told the government?
Yes.
So it is true that you told the government that it was your understanding that the farm could use the money to invest in any project that it wanted. Right.
Yes, but not the contract time.
Speaking of the contract, why don't we go back to the contract? If we could just zoom in on 1A in the contract, use of proceeds. Now, this sentence says, use of proceeds. The loan proceeds advanced under this agreement is for the general working capital purposes of the borrower. Do you see that?
Yes.
Who is the borrower under this agreement?
MOS Farm.
We can take that down or just zoom back out. Keep the exhibit up, but zoom back out. If we could go to the interest rate section. And this says that the interest rate would be 3% per annum on the loan amount payable in full on the final maturity date. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then if we can zoom in on final maturity date. It says, final maturity date 36 months from the effective date. Do you see that?
Yes.
Do you understand that maturity date means when the loan payment becomes due?
Yes.
And so the loan payment isn't due before the maturity date, right?
Yes.
Now, you expected to get interest on the loan, right?
Because at that time, somebody already got the 3% when I asked for the refund.
Mr. Skirik said, move to strike as non-responsive. You can't tell me what other people told you. I'm asking what your understanding was at the time.
The court said, sustained.
I understand it, so I just feel unfair why someone else.
I'm sorry. Can you speak up?
I understand it.
You understood that it was for interest, right? The farm loan was for interest.
So why not me?
That's my question. So you expected interest.
So, I don't want it.
Mr. Skirik said, move to strike, Your Honor. I'm asking you if at the time you signed this agreement you expected to earn interest.
Actually, at that time just the 3% surprised me, because before Miles was said 6%.
Mr. Skirik said, again, Your Honor. Move to strike.
The court said, both answers are stricken. I want you to listen carefully to the question, and you may read back the question, and answer just what's being asked.
Record was read.
Not really.
Ma'am, when you met with the government, do you recall telling them that you were upset that you didn't get interest?
No.
Let's see if we can help with that. Can we please pull up, Honor?
Mr. Ferguson said, objection to the commentary, Your.
The court said, don't testify. Ask her if there is anything that would refresh her recollection.
Would it be possible if we could show you a document to help refresh your memory?
I'm not sure.
Mr. Skirik said, may we, Your Honor?
The court said you may.
Please pull up 3620 to 10 at 3. While we're waiting for that. It was your impression that others had been paid interest, right?
I knew some, yes.
And based on that you expected to be paid interest?
No.
You didn't expect to be paid interest. Others got it, but you didn't expect to get interest.
The court said, asked and answered.
Now, isn't it true that under the loan agreement the loan amount and any accrued interest is paid on that maturity date? Right.
Mr. Ferguson said, asked and answered.
The court said, you may answer that question. Actually, no. I do recall you're asking the question, so the objection is sustained.
Now, Ms. Wu, you sought to terminate the loan agreement before the maturity date, right?
Yes, I sought it. Somebody did it, so I sought it.
In fact, you did terminate the loan agreement before the maturity date, right?
Yes, follow examples.
And based on that, you're not entitled to any interest, right? We just read the contract, right?
Yeah.
Is it your understanding that based on your early termination you are not entitled to interest?
Mr. Ferguson said, to the extent it doesn't call for a legal conclusion, no objection.
The court said, her understanding, but obviously not a legal conclusion. You may answer what your understanding is.
My understanding for that at that time when I asked for the refund. I just feel this is illegal, so I don't want the 3% interest anymore, that illegal money.
You testified on direct that you didn't get your 3% interest, right?
I said that because they didn't show any intention to give me, so I didn't get, and I also don't want that.
Continued on next page.
Mr. Skirik said, "Move to strike, Your Honor."
Mr. Ferguson said, Your Honor, we've covered it as well, so maybe we can move.
The court said, "The answer is stricken."
By Mr. Skirik.
Now you entered into a release of the loan agreement, right?
Yes.
And the farm in fact refunded your loan, you received all $20,000 back, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now nowhere in the agreement that we looked at, that we just reviewed, does it say that you would get GTV stock for your $20,000 loan to the farm, right?
They used the GTV stock to allure me to go with this loan program, so yes. I understand no GTV on the contract, but
it doesn't say GTV stock anywhere in the contract, right?
So that is a scam.
Right. And then in fact, you recall telling the government during one of your meetings with them that Mr. Guo said that the farm money is for the farm. Not just TV, just, pardon me, withdrawn. You recall telling the government during one of your meetings with them that Mr. Guo said that the farm loan money is for the farm.
Mr. Ferguson said, I believe asked and answered.
Not for GTV.
Mr. Ferguson said, I believe asked and answered.
The court said, "I'll allow her to answer the question."
Not on the contract time, later they said that.
My question is, do you recall telling the government that that's your understanding at the time?
I told the government, but I didn't at that time. I should tell the government they just said this later, the contract, so.
That's not what you told the government, right?
The court said, "She's testified as to what she told the government."
Because the government didn't ask that.
Mr. Skirik said, "There's no question pending, Your Honor."
Mr. Ferguson said, well, then he's just arguing with the witness, so.
The court said, "Move on."
Now you testified earlier that you invested through a company called Wonder Invest, is that right?
Yes.
And that company was set up by your husband, right?
Yes.
Now did you talk to your husband about the farm loan before you made it?
Yes.
Did your husband review the contract?
The Wonder Invest is mine at that time.
Ma'am, my question is, did your husband review the contract?
This is my contract. Why I need my husband to review the contract? I don't understand this question.
It's a simple question. He either did or didn't review it. So my question is, did he review it at the time?
I told him by myself. He didn't review, but I told him.
Okay. But you told him about it?
Yeah.
Okay. Now you testified that, withdrawn. Now you actually received your refund of the farm loan money before you made your first complaint to the government. Is that right?
Yes. I don't remember the time I complained to the government. It may be, yes.
Mr. Skirik said, okay. Now I'd just like to go back briefly to GXVN 39. And if we could go to the addendum that's at the end of this document. And scroll to the bottom but excluding the last page. One more down, please. There we go.
By Mr. Skirik.
Now you recall being shown this document by Mr. Ferguson.
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Ferguson pointed out that the loan agreement was signed in November of 2021 by a representative of the farm. Right.
Yes.
And this addendum is signed by you around the same time, right?
Yes.
Like 3 days later.
Yes.
Right. Mr. Skirik said, and if we go back to the first page of the addendum, please. And this addendum that you signed more than a year later, after signing the first loan contract. You testified you didn't review this one either.
Almost not.
So you did review it to some extent.
I just reviewed it where I should fill in for example, my name, the time.
Okay. And you reviewed it and you actually included and we're not going to display this. But you included a copy of your driver's license as well, right?
They ask it.
Sure. That's what was asked for, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you had the time to fill it in and make a copy of your driver's license. And now did you send this back by email?
Mr. Ferguson said, Your Honor, objection to testifying. If he has a question about that, he can ask it.
The court said, I'm waiting for the question.
The question is, did you return this by email?
I don't remember. Maybe to G-Service Volunteer.
The court said, what is that, G-Service Volunteer?
The witness said, oh sorry. G-Series, G-Series. A lot of G, GTV, G-Fashion, G-Club, it's all together G-Series.
The court said, please continue.
And so it's possible that you handed this in hard copy to another person.
No.
The court said, so don't ask her what might be possible. Ask her what happened.
Do you recall whether you did that? Did you hand it in hard copy to another person?
Not by hand. Not by hand.
Then how did you convey it, ma'am?
Mr. Ferguson said, asked and answered.
Mr. Skirek said, just trying to understand how it was sent back.
The court said, you've already asked the question.
So is it your testimony that at no point after signing this addendum you reviewed it more carefully?
No.
You never reviewed it?
I reviewed some.
Okay.
Just the 3%, like that.
Now you testified that there was some time pressure on you with respect to the original loan agreement. There wasn't any time pressure on you with respect to this addendum, was there?
Yeah.
There was.
My family issue. My family issue.
So there wasn't any time pressure put on you by Mr. Guo. Right.
Yes.
Right. No time pressure put on you by anybody at the farms, right?
They asked several days to return it.
Sure. Do you think several days is enough time to review a 4-page contract?
If carefully, one by one, word by word, not enough.
4 days isn't enough to review a 4-page contract.
Mr. Ferguson said, asked and answered.
The court said, asked and answered and don't testify.
Mr. Skirek said, okay. Okay. Now when did you, according to you, first review either the loan agreement or the addendum, in detail?
Can you repeat that again?
Sure.
The court said, are you asking when did she make a thorough review of the contract?
Mr. Skirek said, yes, Your Honor.
The court said, and the addendum?
Mr. Skirek said, correct, Your Honor.
The court said, okay. Go ahead.
You mean carefully review of this?
That's right. That's the question.
Not one by one. Maybe just some.
Mr. Skirek said, move to strike, Your Honor.
The court said, the answer is stricken. The question is when.
The witness said, when. Cannot remember when.
Okay. Did you ever review it carefully before you met with the prosecutors?
Yes.
When was that, approximately?
Around the time I asked a refund.
Around the time you asked, you planned to ask for a refund, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And were you surprised by what was in there?
Not exactly that surprised.
Yeah, not that surprised, right?
Because
Mr. Ferguson said, Your Honor.
A lot of people said something already about this contract.
Mr. Skirek said, okay. I'll move on. Now again, I'm going to change topics, Your Honor. Is now a good time or should we continue?
The court said, all right, yes. This is a fine time. It's 11:55, so you'll have your break. We'll return at 12:30. Remember not to discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. Don't permit anyone to discuss the case in your presence. And don't read, watch, or listen to anything from any source that has anything to do with the subject matter of this trial. You may step out. Don't discuss your testimony.
Jury not present. Witness not present.
The court said, you may be seated. Do the parties want to raise anything before we return at 12:30?
Mr. Ferguson said, not from the government.
Mr. Skirik said, not from the defense, Your Honor.
The court said, all right.
Luncheon recess. Afternoon session 12:30 p.m.
The court said, please get the jurors.
Jury present.
The court said, please be seated, and you may continue the cross-examination. Remember, ma'am, that you are still under oath.
The witness said, yes.
Mr. Skirik said, thank you, Your Honor.
By Mr. Skirik.
I'd like to just talk briefly about H-Coin. So I believe you testified that you purchased H-Coin in April of 2021, right?
Yes.
And you purchased $4,500 worth of H-Coin, is that right?
You mean total?
Yeah.
More than that.
Okay. How much, in total?
Plus 5% commission, plus 35 other fees.
I'm sorry. Can you just speak up a little? Plus what?
The H-Coin fee, plus 5% commission, plus 35 other fees.
Right. And my question was just how much you spent on the H-Coin. Was it more than 4,500 or 4,500?
I have 44,500, right? Then should be 4,450 for H-Coin only.
Right. Okay. So you spent, am I correct in understanding you that you spent $4,500 on H-Coin?
Yeah, for H-Coin only.
Yeah. Okay. That's all my question was. Mr. Skirik said, all right. Now if we could please pull up Government Exhibit VN 37. And Ms. Wu, I believe this is the exhibit that Mr. Ferguson showed you on direct. Okay. Now do you remember Mr. Ferguson asking you some questions about this document earlier?
Yes.
Okay. And this reflects here on page 1 that you purchased 44,500 coins, right?
Yes.
The court said, if you would bring the microphone close to your mouth.
The witness said, okay.
The court said, you can pull it, you can move it around.
The witness said, yes.
Okay. And then Mr. Ferguson asked you some questions about your understanding of this document, right?
Understanding this contract?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And was it your understanding at the time that you signed this that the H-Coin were being offered to you in part because of your volunteer work for the farms?
They already added into this number for 44,500.
Right. And my question is a little different. My question is, did you understand that the reason that you were being offered the opportunity to buy this number of H-Coin was partly based on your volunteer work for the farm?
No, I don't understand that. I never heard of that.
You didn't understand that. Am I right that there was a formula that you testified to on direct that determined the number of coins that you would be allocated?
Yes.
And didn't that formula include in part how much volunteer work you had done for the farms? Or for the alliance?
For the farms, that formula does not include this volunteer work, H-Coin. I don't know how to call it.
Okay. What did it include, as far as you understand?
That formula calculation number, at that time, and then when I needed to pay for this H-Coin. The G-Series volunteer told me I should pay how much and told me something like how many H-Coins I should have.
Okay. And did you, in that conversation with the volunteer, did they ask you about your volunteer work?
Ask my volunteer work? For what? I mean.
So you'll correct me if I get it wrong. But my understanding was that you had a conversation with a volunteer about the allocation of H-Coins. Do I have that right so far?
Not discussion, just send me a message, just let me know.
Okay. So it was by Discord?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm just going to refer to that as a discussion, if that's okay.
Okay.
Okay. So in that Discord discussion, did the volunteer mention your volunteer work for the farm?
No.
Okay. Now do you recall telling the government that it was your understanding that your volunteer work figured into the coin allocation formula?
No.
You don't recall that?
You mean I tell the government about I volunteer work for the H coin?
Yeah. You don't recall telling the government that?
I don't remember.
Okay. Maybe it will help if I show you a document. Mr. Skirik said, could we please pull up 3620-17? And if we could just highlight that relevant portion there, Jorge.
The witness said, "Oh, I remember this."
Does that refresh your memory that your volunteer work was part of the formula for determining your H-coin allocation?
Yes.
Okay. Great. We can put that down. Okay. So being given this H-coin allocation was at the time. You understood, an opportunity or a reward for your volunteer work, right?
I know this after that the G-series volunteer gave me the number. At that time I felt very strange about this number, and later, somebody told me about this.
So it's your testimony you didn't understand at the time that you were being given this opportunity to buy H-coin because you did volunteer work. You only learned that after. Just looking to clarify.
Mr. Ferguson said, I think it misstates the testimony. But
The court said you may answer.
I think when I got the Discord message, I was kind of confused. And I just to confirm the number with that volunteer worker, they said everything was correct. And then I just paid the money, but later, I asked somebody else, they just said, that was your reward.
So they used the word reward, right?
Yeah. After the payment, I understood that.
Okay. But that's what you understood. That it was a benefit you were being given as a reward for part of your work, right?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson said, just objection to form.
The court said you may answer.
Okay. Now at the time that you signed, I'm sorry. Mr. Skirik said, Jorge, could we pull that back up, the 37? Sorry. At the time that you signed this document, did you read this one?
Already said at that time I already wanted a refund so I didn't pay attention, but I need to sign. I needed to sign this first.
Okay. So you didn't read this one either?
Not really.
Okay. And your testimony is that at the time you signed this, you had already decided that you were going to leave the movement, right? You were uncomfortable.
I had not decided at that time to leave this movement because I think even if I got all my money back, I could still in this group, right? So at that time I hadn't decided if leave or not. That's year 2021.
So you may have, if you got all of your money back, you may have stayed in the movement, is that right?
Mr. Ferguson said, calls for speculation.
Mr. Skirik said, I believe that's what she just said, Your Honor.
The court said, I think you may answer. Go ahead.
I hadn't had the final decision at that time. The final decision made just 2022.
Right. But that's what you were considering. You were considering staying in the movement even if you got your money back, right?
Yeah. Some people, they didn't pay anything, but still in the group.
Right. Okay. Now did a time come when you did read this document? Before you met with the prosecutors?
You mean, can you just repeat?
Sure. Did a time come when you read this document, the one that's on your screen? Before you met with the prosecutors?
Yes.
So you did read this one at some point?
Yes, some point, not all.
And when was that?
When I asked the refund.
Okay. So I believe you testified that you read your farm loan agreements when it came time to ask for a refund. Right.
Not all, some, yes.
How many farm loan agreements are there?
I mean, this contract, there are several pages, right? That's long. So.
Well, let's count them. How many pages are there? If we could just flip. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
5 and a signature page.
Yes.
Did I count that correctly?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Now you, as part of your work for the farm, you were a translator, right?
Yes.
You translated documents from Mandarin to English.
English Mandarin, Mandarin English.
Yeah, sure. Both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. And for a 5-page document, how long would it take you to translate that?
This is a lot of terminology, financial or law terminology. I don't want to. At that time I already thought about leaving, so why I spend a lot of time on this?
So when you did translation work for Mountains of Spices as part of the Sarah Way lawsuit, do you remember we talked about that earlier today?
Yes.
Okay. Now is it fair to say that there was plenty of law and legal terminology in those materials?
Actually, the assistant did a lot of this part.
Okay.
I just the plain translation and some calculation for the number.
Okay. So you had, it sounds like, is it fair to say you had limited translation skills?
Not limited. I don't have that time. I didn't have that time, a lot of time. That assistant always stayed night to do this, and after that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
After that, she just felt so tired, and she just asked me to help her something, so.
Okay. And you were, I believe you testified you were not employed at this time, right? At the time that you signed this agreement, you'd been retired.
Important, retire? You mean retire myself?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And so your testimony is that you were retired but you didn't have the time to read a 5-page document.
At that time I said my family issues.
Okay. Now did anyone, withdrawn? No one put pressure on you to sign this document quickly, right?
Yes.
I believe you testified that you signed this document weeks if not months later, right?
Months, because the months later, they gave us the contract.
But you had already sent the money, right?
At that time, nothing, no contract, no agreement, nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
So you had the opportunity to review the agreement, there was no rush to get the money in, right? Because it was already in.
Money already paid.
Right.
Yeah.
So you had time to review the agreement, no?
If I didn't sign, can I get my money back?
Ma'am, can you try answering my question?
Okay, yeah. Review? Yes?
You had time, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I'm asking. Now as you testified before, you had, a time came, when you asked for a refund, right, for the H-coin purchase.
Yes.
Right. And you followed up a few times with a volunteer to get the refund, right?
Yes.
And that was in January of 2023, approximately, right?
January? You mean I got the refund?
No. That you followed up with a volunteer. The timing was, when you followed up with the volunteer. In approximately January of 2023.
I still don't understand. January 2023.
Do you remember when you got the refund?
I remember should be March.
That you received the refund, right, received the money back.
Some.
Okay. And what you're referring to is you didn't receive back $200 or so in what you view as fees, right?
5% commission fee, and.
Right. But you got everything else back besides the 5% commission, right?
Just for the H-coin only. You asked me to calculate at the beginning.
Right. Okay. Now you mentioned that you invested through Wonder Invest, right? You testified about that.
Not for H-coin.
Okay. But you did invest through it for farms and GTV. You made the farm loan through
VOG, right? You mean VOG? One transfer, yes, was Wonder Invest.
Okay. And the farm loans?
Yes.
Okay. Now does Wonder Invest, withdrawn? Did Wonder invest in anything else apart from I think what you called the G-series investments?
You asked into my own company, is that okay?
Yeah. That's fine with me.
Okay. Yes.
My question is, did it invest in anything else?
My own company?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. What?
Stock.
What kinds of stock?
Just some kind of.
Like stock on the stock exchange.
Yeah, just stock on the market.
What kind of investments? What kind of stock?
What kind of stock? You mean the field, what field?
Yeah. Why don't we try this? How much are those other investments worth?
Altogether?
Yeah.
Including already sold?
Why don't?
Mr. Ferguson said, Your Honor, just a relevance objection.
The court said, "Are you asking what her current portfolio is worth?"
Mr. Skirek said, Your Honor, she testified that she invested through this company. So I'm just trying to figure out what else the company invested in.
Mr. Ferguson said, Just a relevance objection.
The court said, "You may ask that question."
I cannot remember.
Okay.
You want a statement? I can't.
Ma'am, I'm just asking you for your memory of what else you've invested in.
Mr. Ferguson said, She said she can't remember.
The court said, "She doesn't remember. Let's go."
Now you testified that it was your company. But didn't you also testify on direct that your husband gave it to you just to play with?
Yeah.
Okay. So how much, approximately, is in there for you to play with?
The same questions you asked, just like how many stock, right?
No.
Mr. Ferguson said, Object on relevance, Your Honor.
The court said, "Are you asking how much money her husband gave her to play with?"
Mr. Skirek said, Well, what is the value of the assets and cash that are in this entity that she has to play with? That's my question.
The court said, "You may answer."
Just the company, the account itself.
Okay. You can't give me a dollar figure, right?
Give you $1?
Figure. A dollar amount. Do you understand me okay?
I understand. It's just the company bank account. Just this account. Just like you open account. Then you have that account.
Sure. But you won't tell me the dollar amount, but the account.
Mr. Ferguson said, Objection.
The court said, "So don't testify. Only ask questions."
Mr. Skirek said, Sure. Okay. All right. We'll move on. Now you were asked some questions by Mr. Ferguson about if you knew you had H-coin on the Himalaya exchange. Do you remember that?
I cannot hear you, the whole sentence. Can you repeat again? Just, I.
Yes. So, no problem. So you testified earlier when you were on direct examination with Mr. Ferguson. And he asked you if you knew if your H-coin was ever on the Himalaya exchange. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And you said no, right?
Yes. I don't have account.
Okay. And you checked, right?
Checked what?
Ma'am, you checked whether your H-coin was on the Himalaya exchange is the question I just asked.
Mr. Ferguson said, Asked and answered.
Mr. Skirek said, She did not answer.
The court said, "You may answer."
You mean a check?
The court said, "No. He's asking whether you checked. Did you inquire? Did you check?"
The witness said, I don't have account. Where I to check?
So the answer is you didn't check, right?
I have no place to check. I don't know how to, which one to ask.
Did you call anybody?
I asked the volunteer work there, they said they don't know.
Okay. Did you ever sell any of your H-coin?
I don't have H-coin in my hand. How could I sell? I don't have in my hand. I cannot control it. How could I sell anything?
Well, that's the question. So the answer would be no.
Okay.
The court said, all right. So don't tell her what the answer should be. You ask questions, she gives answers. You don't testify and she doesn't ask questions.
Mr. Skirik said, sure. Let's talk about your G Club's membership. Now, did you first learn about G Clubs from the G Club's launch video?
I know G Club from Miles Guo's video.
From his, now do you recall launching, excuse me? Withdrawn. Do you recall watching the launch video for G Clubs?
Miles Guo smoking, that one?
Do you know what I mean by launch video?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think I mean?
I just remember he's just smoking in that video. That one?
Mr. Skirik said, move to strike as non-responsive.
The court said, no. She's asking you, are you referring to a video in which Mr. Guo is smoking?
Mr. Skirik said, why don't we make this easy and pull up the video? GXC 148, V1. And let's please go to timestamp 328. And we'll just play it for a few seconds.
Mr. Ferguson said, I think, Your Honor, Mr. Skirik may be pulling up GXC9. I may have misheard. But I think that's the exhibit.
The court said, well, you can confer with him.
Counsel conferring.
Mr. Skirik said, Your Honor, may we approach?
The court said, sure.
Continued on next page. At the sidebar.
Mr. Skirik said, so, Your Honor. We just want to note for the record that the 3,500 material shows that the witness met with the government on at least one occasion. Perhaps more, with an interpreter, and that she continues to seem to have trouble in understanding questions. Asking questions directly. So we'd like to ask for an interpreter.
Mr. Ferguson said, I've never used an interpreter with her. I had a standby interpreter on the calls. Because we don't know, when we're first talking to someone, their facility with English.
The court said, so was there ever an agent, whether you or someone else, who used an interpreter?
Mr. Ferguson said, not that I'm aware of.
The court said, she seems to me as being exceptionally smart and fluent in English. It may be a bit broken, but I have the sense that she understands every single word that you're saying. And she's great at the volleys.
Mr. Skirik said, well, I have to say I respectfully disagree. I think we've had to rephrase questions any number of times to try to get it across. Your Honor struck numerous answers from her testimony as being non-responsive. It either shows that she's not willfully responding to the question or she doesn't understand.
The court said, she's against your client and she wants to let the world know what she thinks. So she might be resisting you, but it's not about the language.
Mr. Skirik said, Your Honor, I think, you know.
Ms. Strofa said, so I think at one point, Your Honor. She was asked a question about when she had seen a document or something to that effect, and her answer was indicative of she thought when the document was in fact created as opposed to when she saw it. We're just suggesting that because the direct flows more easily because she's prepped, so on the cross. It seems that she doesn't quite understand either the lingo or the question. And, look, she can volley all she wants. She's very funny. I'll give you that.
The court said, she is as clever as she can be, and you can't be clever if you don't understand the question.
Ms. Strofa said, well.
Mr. Skirik said, or be clever by pretending not to understand the question.
The court said, that's very possible, but I do not have the sense she has a language problem. I think she has a problem with your client and she's letting you know. And you've got to be deft and you've got to be agile. That's how it works.
Continued on next page. In open court. By Mr. Skirik.
Okay. So we're going to play you a video and you just let me know if you recognize it, okay?
Okay.
And if you don't, Ms. Wu, if you don't understand a word that I'm using or a phrase that I'm using, just feel free to let me know and I'm happy to rephrase, okay?
Okay.
Video played, for witness only.
Okay. Do you recognize that as the launch video for G Clubs?
I don't remember.
Okay. Now at the time you were watching Mr. Guo's broadcasts fairly regularly, right?
Too many. I cannot remember every one.
Yeah. I'm sure. So a time came when you purchased the G Club's membership, right?
Yeah.
Now did you purchase the G Club membership after watching this video?
I don't remember.
Would you have made the purchase if you hadn't watched the video?
Mr. Ferguson said, objection.
The court said, sustained. If she can't remember, then how she can answer this follow-up question?
How did you first learn about G Clubs?
Miles Guo said that.
When?
I don't remember.
Do you remember approximately when?
On a yacht.
No, in time, ma'am.
I don't remember.
Do you think you sent $10,000 to G Clubs?
Yes.
Withdrawn. How did you learn where to send the $10,000 for G Club's purchase?
How do you learn?
Yeah. How did you know where to send the $10,000 for the G Club's purchase?
gclub.com?
So you went to the website.
Yeah, the farm told us to do so.
Okay. And you registered on the website?
Yes.
Okay. And you received a membership number, right?
You mean the online number, right?
A membership number, right?
Okay, yes, online, yeah.
And do you recall whether you received that before or after you watched the G Club's video?
I don't remember.
Okay. Now you testified that G Clubs didn't give you any benefits, right?
Yes.
You did have a potential discount on G Fashion, right?
Yes.
But you didn't like their stuff.
Yes.
Now did you ever ask or inquire of G Clubs whether they were adding additional benefits?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me about that.
I wrote email to them.
Did you produce that email to the government?
No. I deleted it, because one time my computer, some problem. I don't know what happened. Something just, gone.
Sure. It got deleted.
Yeah.
Did you ever, besides the email that you just referenced? Did you ever inquire in any other way about whether they were adding additional benefits?
I talked with members of the farm about this.
Okay. But my question was, did you talk to anyone at G Clubs? Or attempt to get in touch with anyone at G Clubs?
No.
Okay. Now wasn't one of the benefits of G Clubs the G Talk sweepstakes?
The benefits, not that useful.
Didn't you enter the G Talk sweepstakes?
Once.
Only once.
Yeah. Because somebody told me something.
Sure. There's no question pending.
Okay.
Mr. Skirik said, all right. Now if we could just please pull up GXC 148, TX, which is also in evidence. And if we can go to page 5, please. Can you see that document displayed on the screen in front of you?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm going to read there. You let me know if I get it correct, okay? And this comes from the G Club's launch video. Under the reviewed.
Mr. Ferguson said, he's testifying. He just said this is the G Club's launch video. She never said that.
The court said, so the witness has not stated that she remembers the G Club launch video.
Mr. Skirik said, and I'm only showing this to her and reading it to her to see if it refreshes her recollection.
The court said, so let's step up, please.
Continued on next page. At the sidebar.
The court said, so she doesn't recall whether she saw the launch video. If you want to refresh her recollection, first you would say, is there something that might refresh your recollection? Then you would show that to her. But you can't read from it. You'd ask her to read from it and ask, does this refresh your recollection?
Mr. Skirik said, this document is in evidence, Your Honor.
The court said, absolutely, but when you're refreshing somebody's recollection, you can't read from the document. You have to first show the person the document and ask them, does it refresh your recollection?
Mr. Ferguson said, and my objection was just him stating this is from the launch video when she's never testified to that. She doesn't remember watching the video.
Mr. Skirik said, Mr. Ferguson is stating.
The court said, the launch video is in evidence. And so you're trying to get at whether or not she saw it and whether she heard these warnings. That's what you're trying to get at, right?
Mr. Skirik said, sure.
The court said, so first you've got to establish that she has some recollection of seeing the video. She said she doesn't recollect. So maybe you can jog her memory. And the way that you jog the memory is by showing her something, whatever that thing might be. Just showing it to her alone and asking her.
Mr. Skirik said, happy to do that. Happy to do that.
The court said you could, for example, show her the video without the sound, and ask her does she recollect seeing that.
Mr. Skirik said, and that's what that video actually was, Your Honor, was the beginning of it. Beginning of the launch video.
The court said, that was a document that we're reading from and what I'm suggesting is not right.
Mr. Skirik said, I was referring to the previous exhibit, Your Honor. That had the Mandarin on the one side and the English on the other, and the audio recording. That's actually the launch video. But I'm happy to take the court's point. I'm happy to refresh her recollection.
The court said, okay.
Continued on next page. In open court. By Mr. Skirik.
Now, Ms. Wu, you testified earlier, correct? That you don't recall whether you watched the G Club's launch video.
I don't remember. I don't remember.
Okay. Would it help if I showed you the document, help refresh your memory?
No.
So nothing I can show you would help refresh your memory. You know that for sure without ever having seen it.
Mr. Ferguson said, objection.
The court said, sustained. Is there something that might refresh your recollection? That's the question.
The witness said, for that video, no.
The court said, move on.
By Mr. Skirik.
Do you have any problems with your memory, ma'am?
I don't think so.
Okay. Now you were asked some questions by Mr. Ferguson about Miles Guo being targeted by the CCP. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And you said you don't think that the projects that Miles Guo worked on had anything to do with the CCP. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Mr. Skirik said, okay. Can we pull up DX Stip 1? Now I'm going to read you this document, and you let me know if it changes your mind.
Okay.
About the question you just answered. It is hereby stipulated and agreed by the United States of America and Miles Guo, the defendant, through their attorneys of record that, 1. The FBI has investigated individuals who, working at the direction of the government of the People's Republic of China, the PRC government, have engaged in an international campaign known as Operation Fox Hunt, to coerce individuals located in the United States and elsewhere to return to China to face charges brought by the PRC government or to otherwise reach financial settlements with the PRC government. 2. In 2017, a U.S. law enforcement agency assessed that Mr. Miles Guo was the highest priority of China's repatriation efforts. 3. In 2017, a U.S. law enforcement agency received information that Chinese officials were paying and providing food and signs to protesters of Mr. Guo. 4. In 2018, a U.S. law enforcement agency received information that the PRC government had established a special investigative group in China to manage China's investigation of and actions against Mr. Guo. Now if we could scroll down to the next page. 5. To carry out some of the objectives of Fox Hunt, in 2017, the PRC government tasked a specially designated group of operatives, the group, with discrediting and harassing individuals including Mr. Guo by using interactive computer services and electronic communication systems. Now if we could just scroll down to paragraph 6. Please. 6. Since Mr. Guo fled the PRC, the PRC government has sought his return for prosecution in the PRC and has employed numerous methods to effect Mr. Guo's capture or arrest. In May 2017, the PRC government sent 4 undeclared agents from the PRC's Ministry of State Security, MSS, to the United States to attempt to cause Mr. Guo's coerced repatriation to the PRC as part of the Fox Hunt initiative. The U.S. government disrupted the PRC government's efforts to forcefully repatriate Mr. Guo. And Mr. Guo continued to reside in the United States. Do you see that, ma'am?
Yes. Yes.
Do you still believe that Mr. Guo's projects had nothing to do with being anti-CCP?
Not exactly. I think this shows nothing to prove Miles Guo anti the CCP. I don't think so.
Mr. Skirik said, no further questions at this time, Your Honor.
The court said redirect?
Mr. Ferguson said, thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Loftus, do you want to pull up DX Stip 1 if you have it?
Redirect examination. By Mr. Ferguson.
While we're waiting, Ms. Wu, about the stipulation, the agreement between the parties you were just read. Can you explain to the jury what you mean when you say that doesn't have anything to do with Miles Guo being anti-CCP?
Mr. Skirik said, objection. She just explained it.
The court said, I don't know if that was her exact answer. You could ask her to further explain the answer. But I don't know the way you characterize it if that's correct.
Mr. Ferguson said, understood, Your Honor. Ms. Wu, could you explain your answer to the jury, please?
Fox hunt, this operation, chased after many people. Actually, not all people on this list are good people. As far as I know, Fox hunt operation wanted a lot of people who colluded with CCP officer or officers to make huge fortune, and then these people escaped abroad with the money. So this operation included some kind of these people, and as far as I can searched online.
Mr. Skirik said, Your Honor, objection.
The court said, overruled. You may continue.
I just find that Miles Guo belongs to this category, so he committed economic crimes in China. I didn't find things about Miles Guo's political reason in China. So, I think that's paragraphs prove nothing that Miles Guo anti-CCP.
And Ms. Wu, you testified that you first learned about Miles Guo in 2018, right?
Yes.
And had you heard of him before that?
No.
Had you heard of him being a CCP dissident before that?
No.
All right. Ms. Wu, you were asked some questions about Sarah Wei.
Yes.
Which farm did Sarah Wei lead?
At that time, Phoenix Farm.
Who picked the farm leaders?
Miles Guo.
Who gave the farm leaders instructions?
Miles Guo.
Mr. Ferguson said, and Ms. Loftus, if we could pull up GXZ9. Could we go to page 192? Ms. Wu, you were also asked questions about a falling out between Miles Guo and Sarah Wei. Do you remember that?
Yes.
All right. Now just focusing you on the bottom of page 192 here, this date in this chart is February 13th, 2023. And the image there says full text of Miles Guo's getter video. Mr. Ferguson said, if we could scroll down slightly. And we'll go to the bottom of 193. If we could, Ms. Wu, I'll just read the two paragraphs here. It says, don't make excuses for yourself under any circumstances.
Mr. Skirik said, objection.
The court said, is this document in evidence?
Mr. Ferguson said, it is, Your Honor.
Mr. Skirik said, is there a question?
The court said, perhaps you could ask the question first.
Mr. Ferguson said, yes, Your Honor. Is it okay if I ask Mr. Skirik if she can let me know if I read it correctly?
The court said no. You certainly could whisper in his ear the anticipated question.
Counsel conferring. By Mr. Ferguson.
Ms. Wu, can you read the two paragraphs starting with, don't make excuses?
Don't make excuses for yourself under any circumstances, whether it comes to earning money, striving for a goal, or pursuing what you believe in. Don't justify your failures and greed. In particular, Chinese people always like to pass the buck and blame someone in the family or their life for their own mistakes. They always make someone else the scapegoat and say it is this person's fault or that it was not because of him. Our Chinese like to point fingers at others. Please, take responsibility for what you do.
Mr. Skirik said, Your Honor, objection. There's no question.
The court said, I'm waiting for the question.
Are you familiar with what a scapegoat is?
This word, yes.
What is a scapegoat?
Just put your fault on others, and let others be responsible for your fault.
Mr. Ferguson said, Ms. Loftus, if we could go to page 6. Ms. Wu, you were asked about this entry on the chart. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson said, if we could scroll down. I'm sorry. Could we scroll up slightly, Ms. Loftus? And Ms. Wu, in this video, just focusing you on the last sentence of that first paragraph.
Okay.
Could you read that sentence?
This turned out to be a conservative estimate and 17.5 times the valuation.
And what sorts of things did Miles Guo say about the value of GTV?
Mr. Skirik said, objection. Asked and answered.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
He said, I remember 20 billion, maybe he said later was higher value.
Mr. Ferguson said, and Ms. Loftus, if we could go to page 28. Ms. Wu. You were also asked about whether you sent your farm loan money before seeing a Miles Guo video about the farms. Do you remember being asked about that?
I remember he asked about the G Club's video.
Okay. We can do that too. Mr. Ferguson said, if we can scroll down slightly. And we can keep scrolling down. Now, Ms. Wu, do you see the date on the chart here is July 22nd, 2020?
Yes.
Is this before you sent your G Club's money?
Yes.
And do you see in the screenshot there, it says you become a shareholder of G Club immediately?
Yes. GXB 939.
Mr. Ferguson said, if we could just pull up quickly Government Exhibit VN39. While we're waiting, Ms. Wu, you were asked questions about the H-coin quota formula. Do you remember being asked about that?
Yes.
Can you explain how the volunteer work withdrawn? Was the volunteer work the only thing that went into the formula, or just one thing?
Mr. Skirik said, objection.
The court said, sustained.
Can you explain how the volunteer work factored into the formula generally?
I don't know. They did this. I don't think they had any rules for this. They just, if they like you and then give you more, if they, just according to their own feeling. I don't know. I don't know there are any rules for that.
Mr. Skirik said, objection. Speculation, as to what other people thought or did.
The court said. She said she doesn't know if there are any rules. The answer stands.
And Ms. Wu, now that we have the loan agreement up, do you remember being asked questions about? You know, paragraph 1D, here about the maturity date? Do you remember those questions?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson said, if we could scroll down to the signature page. Ms. Wu, at the time you sent your money, did you even have a countersigned contract?
No.
How long after you sent your money and you signed the contract did you get a signed copy back?
Just this, 2021, November 2nd.
And did you get an addendum on that same date?
I cannot remember. Maybe together. I don't remember.
Ms. Wu, you were also asked questions about your family in China. Do you remember being asked questions like that?
Can you make it clearer?
On cross-examination you were asked questions about whether you had family in China. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And you were asked questions about whether you visited China. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Are you testifying today because the CCP forced you to?
No. You mean CCP forced me to sit here to answer your question? No.
Are you a CCP spy?
No.
Mr. Ferguson said, no further questions.
The court said recross?
Recross examination. By Mr. Skirik.
Ms. Wu, you were just shown a video from July 22nd of 2020, right?
Yes, just now.
Okay. Sure. And Mr. Ferguson asked you whether you recalled if you had seen that before you purchased your G Club's membership. Right.
Yes.
Okay. And I showed you a video about the G Club's launch, right?
You showed me the video? No.
You don't recall me showing you a video?
Just about the text, not a video.
It was a video that had text, right?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. And so you remember that I showed that to you earlier?
Yes.
Okay. And you couldn't remember whether the video I showed you was before or after your G Club's purchase, right? That was your testimony.
You didn't say the date, right? I remember after that.
Would it help if I showed it to you to refresh your memory?
Okay.
Mr. Skirik said, so if you pull up GX148, TX, please. This is a document that's in evidence and it's dated October 13, 2020. And go to page 5. Please. And let me know if I get this right. Okay. Under the revised launch plan for G Clubs, however, members will not receive special access to future offerings of stock, will not receive GTV stock, and will not receive loans to purchase memberships. This is serious business, brothers and sisters. Even if you have bought G Club, it absolutely will not come with the stocks. It does not mean that you can buy stocks of G Fashion and GTV, and it does not mean that you will be able to receive loans in the future. No. 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 I'll repeat. This is a very serious topic. No. No. There is no GTV stock. And there is no G Fashion stock. When I hear all this, I got chills. There is none of that. Does that refresh your recollection?
No. And I asked the date for this. The date.
As I said before, it's October 13th. It's 3 days before you purchased your G Club's membership, right?
Mr. Ferguson said, he can't do that, Your Honor.
The court said. She asked for the date.
Mr. Skirik said, it's a fact in evidence.
The court said. October 13th what year?
Mr. Skirik said, 2020. It's a fact in evidence, by stipulation of the parties.
The court said. Are you asking whether or not October 13th comes 2 days before October 15th? Is that the question?
Mr. Skirik said, yes. And it's the 16th.
The court said. Whether October.
Mr. Skirik said, 16th comes 3 days after October 13th, the date of this video.
The court said. It's a compound question, so let's take it in pieces.
By Mr. Skirik.
Okay. You purchased your G Club's membership on October 16th, right? You testified before.
I said October. I don't remember the date.
If I were to show you a document, would it refresh your recollection?
If you have the document, yes. Yes.
Mr. Skirik said, okay. Not for the jury yet, just for the witness and the parties. Ma'am, do you recognize this document?
Yes.
And what is it?
My wire transfer statement.
And in fact, this is a statement that you sent to the government lawyers, right?
Yes.
Mr. Skirik said, Your Honor, we offer this into evidence.
The court said. Any objection?
Mr. Ferguson said, no, Your Honor.
The court said. It is admitted. Do you have an identifier for this?
Mr. Skirik said, yes. DX 7002, Your Honor. I'm sorry. 3, Honor.
Defendant's Exhibit 7003 received in evidence.
Mr. Skirik said, may we publish it to the jury, Your.
The court said yes.
Mr. Skirik said, can we please zoom in on the date under the words wire transfer information?
By Mr. Skirik.
Can you see the document, Ms. Wu?
Yes.
And does this refresh your recollection that you purchased your G Club membership by sending $10,000 on October 16, 2020?
I still cannot remember, but the paper like this, okay, that is the time.
Okay. But you don't have any reason to believe that this document, which you gave to the government, is incorrect, do you?
This is right. This is right.
It's right.
Yeah.
Mr. Skirik said, okay. Now if we go back to the previous exhibit, GXC148, TX. Actually, I take that back. Can we go to GXZ9? And if we can please go to the October 13, 2020, entry. Now do you see the document that's displayed on your screen?
Yes.
And you see that the date column is October 13, 2020.
Yes.
Mr. Skirik said, okay. And now if we can scroll down. Keep going. Keep going, please. Keep going. We're looking for, here. There we go. Now do you see here with the sentence beginning, under the reviewed launch plan for G clubs, however. Members will not thereby have opportunity to subscribe for or purchase any shares to be issued in the future and will not receive GTV club stock. Do you see that?
Mr. Ferguson said, Your Honor, this is the third time we're reading the same text in the examination. Just trying to speed things along.
Mr. Skirik said, just trying to link it up.
The court said, okay. Go ahead.
Do you see that?
Yes.
And that was, as the chart tells you, the chart is in evidence, that is from October 13th, right?
Yes.
And that's 3 days before you purchased your G Club's membership, right?
I heard his previous videos.
My question is, this is 3 days before you purchased your G Club membership, right?
Yes, this is correct.
Okay. Thank you. Now you testified a moment ago that you don't believe that Mr. Guo is truly anti-CCP, right?
No, he's not.
Okay. Well, if we can pull up one more time DX Step 1. Paragraph 5. And I'm going to start reading about halfway through this paragraph, a little bit more than halfway through. Beginning with the words, in or about December 2018. In or about December 2018. Officers of the group were directed to post 3 videos or posts daily with YouTube and Facebook accounts. With one of the posts required to be anti-Mr. Guo. On February 3, 2020. A PRC government official issued a tasking requirement that every member of the group shall write an original article with content related to targeting Mr. Guo. The COVID pandemic, or Hong Kong. The FBI investigated the group's activities, including its activities aimed at Mr. Guo. And the U.S. government has charged many of the group's members with violations of U.S. law. Can you tell me why the PRC government would be targeting?
Mr. Ferguson said, objection.
Mr. Guo in this way if he's not anti-CCP.
The court said, sustained. She cannot speak for the Chinese government.
Does this change your opinion as to whether Mr. Guo is anti-CCP?
No.
Even if the CCP is after him, it doesn't change your opinion at all.
The court said, asked and answered.
Mr. Skirik said, no further questions, Your Honor.
The court said, any redirect?
Mr. Ferguson said, very briefly.
Redirect examination. By Mr. Ferguson.
Ms. Wu, when you sent money to G clubs, what did you expect to receive?
GTV stock.
Mr. Skirik said, beyond the scope.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Did you expect G club's money to be used to buy a mansion?
Mr. Skirik said, objection. Beyond the scope.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Did you expect G club's money would be used to buy a mansion?
No.
Mr. Skirik said, same objection. Mr. Skirik said, no further questions.
The court said, any reary cross?
Mr. Skirik said, no, Your Honor.
The witness said, good.
The court said, you may step out.
The witness said, thank you. Witness excused.
The court said, and the government may call its next witness.
Mr. Finkel said, the government calls Kimberly Espinoza.
The law clerk said, would you raise your right hand, please?
Witness sworn.
The law clerk said, thank you.
The court said, please state your name and spell it.
The witness said, Kimberly Espinoza. Kimberly Espinoza.
The court said, you may inquire.
Mr. Finkel said, thank you, Your Honor. Just one moment, please.
Kimberly Espinoza, called as a witness by the government, having been duly sworn, testified as follows. Direct examination. By Mr. Finkel.
Ms. Espinoza, can you please remind the members of the jury where you work and what your title is?
I work at the FBI and my title is a forensic accountant.
The court said, "One moment, please. You may continue."
Mr. Finkel said, "Thank you, Your Honor." Ms. Espinoza, you've testified at this trial previously. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And after you testified last time you testified at this trial, were you contacted by the case team again?
Yes, I was.
And what, if anything, did the case ask you to do?
To review new financial information and testify again.
And did you review that new financial information?
Yes, I did.
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, at this time, pursuant to GX Stip 14, the government offers GX VNB 1-3, GX IB 1, 3, 4, 7, GX SIG 1, GX SIL 4, GX SIL 3, GX SIL 40.
The court said, "The stipulation is already in evidence?"
Mr. Finkel said, Yes, Your Honor.
The court said, "Any objection?"
Mr. Skirik said, no objection.
The court said, "They are admitted."
Government's exhibits VNB 1-3, IDB 1, IDB 3, IDB 4, IDB 7, SIG 1, SIL 4, SIL 3, SIL 40 received in evidence.
Mr. Finkel said, Pursuant to Stip 8, the government offers BR 451 and BR 452.
Mr. Skirik said, no objection.
The court said, "They're admitted."
Government's exhibit BR 451 and BR 452 received in evidence.
Mr. Finkel said, and the government also offers GX CAP 623 and GX CAP 624.
Mr. Skirik said, no objection.
The court said, "They're admitted."
Government's exhibits CAP 623 and CAP 624 received in evidence.
Mr. Finkel said, Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Loftus, if we could please display for the witness what's been marked for identification as GXZ12. And if you can just flip through that so Ms. Espinoza can take a look at it. We can go back to page 1.
By Mr. Finkel.
Ms. Espinoza, do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
It's an analysis of financial statements that I assisted with.
And did you review this analysis?
Yes, I did.
Did you check it for accuracy based on the underlying exhibits?
Yes, I did.
Is it accurate?
Yes, it is.
And are those underlying exhibits voluminous records?
Yes, they are.
And what kind of records are the underlying exhibits?
Bank accounts, like bank statements, checks, deposits, withdrawals. And also some documentation relating to a property.
Mr. Finkel said, the government offers Z12.
Mr. Skirik said, no objection.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit Z12 received in evidence.
Mr. Finkel said, if we could publish it, please. Ms. Espinoza, at a high level, what was the money flow, if any, that you analyzed in this chart?
It was money that was transferred from Crane Advisory Group LLC to Lowell and Mitchell, LLC. And then the ongoing of funds from there.
The court said, I didn't catch where you said it was transferred.
The witness said, Lowell and Mitchell.
Do you know what Crane Advisory Group is?
I do not.
Do you know who Hatham Khaled is?
I do not.
Okay. This is the first. We're looking at the first slide of Z12, Ms. Espinoza. And at the top left, it says capital 1887 and 890. What do those numbers refer to?
Those are the last 4 digits of 2 bank accounts.
Bank accounts in the name of what entity?
Crane Advisory Group, LLC.
Mr. Finkel said, If we could go to the next slide, please. And what are we looking at here on slide 2?
These are the signature cards for those 2 Crane Advisory Group LLC bank accounts.
What's the signature card?
It's a card provided by the bank listing all the account information and then who's the authorized user or signer of the account.
What's the business name at the top of each of these accounts? The 887 and 890 accounts.
It's Crane Advisory Group, LLC.
And what is the signature at the bottom of these signature cards?
Haytham Khalid.
Mr. Finkel said, "We can go to the next slide, please, Ms. Loftus." And what does this slide represent, Ms. Espinoza?
There were additional Crane Advisory Group LLC bank accounts that were not at Capital One. So there were 7 accounts at 3 other banks.
And they were all in the name of Crane Advisory Group?
Yes, they were.
Mr. Finkel said, "Could we go to the next slide, please?" And what are we looking at here?
These are 3 signature cards for those bank accounts I just referred to. So they're for IDB Bank and for Signature Bank.
And these accounts are in the name of what entities?
Crane Advisory Group, LLC.
And what is the contact information on these 3 documents on the screen, or the name of the individual?
The name of the signer?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Is Haytham Khalid.
Mr. Finkel said, "Okay. We can go to the next slide, please, Ms. Loftus." What is Lowell and Mitchell?
I'm not sure.
Did you look at bank account information for Lowell and Mitchell?
Yes, I did.
And is that at Valley National Bank?
Yes, it is.
Mr. Finkel said, "Could we go to the next slide, please, Ms. Loftus?" And can you explain to the members of the jury, Ms. Espinoza, what this slide represents? Slide 6.
At the bottom is just like an example of one of the statements. So it just shows it said Valley National Bank, it says Lowell and Mitchell, LLC, the address is also listed there. And the last 4 digits of the account, which is 1500.
Okay. Do you know who Aaron Mitchell is?
I do not.
Mr. Finkel said, "Ms. Loftus, if you could bring up GX 128, please, which is in evidence." Do you know who this individual is?
I do not.
Mr. Finkel said, "Ms. Loftus, if we could go back to Z12 at page 6, please." And on the left side of, on the left of this slide, Ms. Espinoza, it says balance as of September 26th. What is the balance as of September 26th, 2021?
$73,672.
Mr. Finkel said, "And if we could go to the next slide, please, Ms. Loftus." And so are these the 3, the groups of accounts that you were analyzing, at least initially?
Yes, that's correct.
Mr. Finkel said, "Let's go to the next slide, please, Ms. Loftus." So we're on slide 8 now, Ms. Espinoza, and what does slide 8 depict? Can you describe it, please, to the members of the jury?
So the 2 Crane Advisory Group LLC Capital One accounts ending in 0887 and 0890 transferred a total of $37,006,848 on September 29, 2021, to Lowell and Mitchell LLC's bank account at Valley National Bank.
Do you know why those 2 Crane accounts transferred $37 million and change on September 29, 2021?
I do not.
Mr. Finkel said, "If we can go to the next page, please, Ms. Loftus." What does this page represent? Slide 9.
The total there at the bottom is the $37,006,848 that I just said from the previous slide. So this is 3 separate transfers which add up to that total.
And why is there an asterisk on the first transfer, the date of the first transfer?
Because the wire went through on September 29, 2021, but on the Capital One statement, the date of the transaction was listed as September 10, 2021.
Do you know the reason for that delay?
I do not.
Mr. Finkel said, if we can go to slide 10, please, Ms. Loftus. Ms. Espinoza, can you describe what slide 10 represents?
So for the other 7 bank accounts at the other 3 banks of Crane, for Crane Advisory Group. LLC bank accounts, $9,542,511 was transferred to Lowell and Mitchell at Valley National Bank between September 27, 2021 and October 27, 2021.
And prior to these transfers, can you remind the jury approximately how much money was in the Lowell and Mitchell account?
It was about $73,000.
Mr. Finkel said, if we can go to slide 11, please, Ms. Loftus. And what does this slide represent?
The total at the bottom is the $9,542,511 from the prior slide. So this is just showing each individual transfer, which makes up that amount.
And so there were some transfers of less than $10. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
That's what the records show.
Yes.
Mr. Finkel said, if we could go to slide 12, please. And so Ms. Espinoza, turning to slide 12. What was the total amount transferred by these 9 Crane Advisory Group bank accounts into Lowell and Mitchell?
$46,549,359.
Did you follow the money flow from the Lowell and Mitchell account further?
Yes, I did.
Mr. Finkel said, go to slide 13, please, Ms. Loftus. And can you tell the jury what we're looking at in slide 13?
On November 8, 2021, Lowell and Mitchell, that same account that we've been discussing at Valley National Bank, transferred $46,549,275 to an account at Silvergate Bank called Hamilton Opportunity Fund SPC.
What is Hamilton Opportunity Fund SPC?
I do not know.
Mr. Finkel said, if we can go to slide 14, please. And by the way, Ms. Espinoza, aside from your testimony today on this chart and your testimony, I guess a week or so ago on that chart, did you have any other involvement in this case?
I did not.
Ms. Espinoza, can you explain to the members of the jury what we're looking at on slide 14?
This is a signature card for the Silvergate Bank account. They referred to it as a master agreement. So it says the 2 people who are authorized to use the account are Kin Ming J.E. and David Fallon.
And Kin Ming J.E. is on the left side?
Yes.
Do you know who that individual is?
I do not.
Mr. Finkel said, Ms. Loftus, can we please pull up Government Exhibit 103?
Mr. Skirik said, objection. Is there a question?
Mr. Finkel said, I'm just waiting for the document to load. My question is, Ms. Espinoza, do you know who this individual is depicted in Government Exhibit 103?
I do not.
Do you know if this is Kin Ming J.E.?
I do not.
Mr. Finkel said, can we go back please to Government Exhibit Z12 at slide 14? And what was the balance prior to these transfers, approximately?
$29 million.
Mr. Finkel said, go to slide 15, please, Ms. Loftus. What happened to the $46.5 million and change that was transferred from Lowell and Mitchell into the Hamilton Opportunity Fund? 7,739 account? What happened to it after that?
On December 2, 2021, the same amount, so $46,549,275, was transferred to another Hamilton Opportunity Fund account at Silvergate Bank. The account's last 4 digits are 7713.
And was there any information in these wire transfers that's not reflected on the chart about the reason for these transfers?
On the bank statement, it did say investor incorrect account, or something to that effect.
And do you know who put that information into the wire transfer?
I do not.
Continued on next page. By Mr. Finkel.
Do you know why that information was included?
It could have been the bank. It could have been the sender, but I don't know why.
Can we go to slide 16, please, Ms. Loftus? The next slide. Ms. Espinoza, what are we looking at here?
This is a mass agreement or signature card for Silvergate Bank at 7713. And it's the same authorized users, which are Kin Ming J.E. and David Fallon.
Kin Ming J.E. and David Fallon are the authorized users for both of these Hamilton Opportunity Fund accounts. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
What was the balance in this Hamilton Opportunity Fund 7713 account prior to the $46.5 million transfer?
$4,779,188.
Ms. Espinoza, did you also track the money flow after this $46.5 million went from Crane Advisory Group to Lowell and Mitchell to Hamilton Opportunity Fund to a second Hamilton Opportunity Fund? Did you find out what happened to it after that?
Yes, I did.
Go to the next slide, please, Ms. Loftus. What happened on December 8, 2021?
$2 million payment was made to McDonald Whitaker Attorney Trust.
If we can go to the next slide, please. Ms. Espinoza, what happened on December 16, 2021?
$24,500,000. A payment was made to Insight Title Services, LLC Trust.
And that payment was made from which account?
The Hamilton Opportunity Fund 7713 account.
If we can go to the next slide, please. What does this slide depict?
An additional $13 million was sent to Buck Esquire, LLC Attorney Trust account between December 1, 2021 and March 2, 2022.
So in total, approximately how much money was transferred from, bringing the money flow all the way down? But ultimately from this Hamilton Opportunity Fund 7713 between December 8 and March 2, 2022.
$39,500,000.
Ms. Espinoza, did you also review documents from Insight Title Services, LLC Trust?
Yes, I did.
Documents pertaining to this $24.5 million?
Well, documents related to a property which is approximately that amount, yes.
Can we go to the next slide, please? Is this one of the documents that you reviewed?
Yes, it is.
It says at the top settlement statement HUD-1. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you know what an HUD-1 statement is?
In looking at the statement, it just for like a property purchase, so it lists the borrower, the seller, the purchase price, and borrower and seller transactions.
And if we can zoom in on the G box on the left side at the top. Are you able to read that, Ms. Espinoza?
Yes. Property location, 675, Ramapo Valley Road, MOA, New Jersey, 07430. Would you like the rest?
No. That's okay. Can you zoom out of that, please? Can you zoom into the box above it where it says name and address of borrower? According to this document, Ms. Espinoza, what is the name of the borrower?
Taurus Fund, LLC.
Do you know what that is?
I do not.
Ms. Loftus, can you zoom in on row 101 where it says contract sales price? What is the contract sales price of this home?
$26 million.
And if we can zoom in, please, on row 201. What does it say for the deposit or earnest money?
$2 million.
Ms. Loftus, you can go back to slide 19. How much was the transfer on December 8, 2021, to McDonald Whitaker Attorney Trust?
$2 million.
Go back to slide 20, the next slide, please, Ms. Loftus. If we can go to the next slide. Are these additional documents from Insight Title Services?
Yes.
If you can zoom in, Ms. Loftus, on the first row on the left. Go all the way over to the right. Can you read across this row, please, The first row, Ms. Espinoza?
On December 17, 2021, Taurus Fund LLC, HUD line 303, cash from borrower, and it's a deposit amount of $24,344,844.44.
Zoom out of that. The bottom of the document, it says $155,155.56. Can you explain the document on the right?
The document on the right is a wire transfer for that same amount. It's made from Insight Title to Buck Esquire, LLC, and there's a note at the bottom which says Overfund.
Ms. Loftus, if you can zoom in on the last row of the last document, the second to last row. Can you read the last, next to December 17, 2021, beginning with Crocker?
Crocker Mansion Estate, LLC, a New Jersey limited liability company, HUD line 603, cash to seller, $10,852,425.02.
Have you ever been to 675 Ramapo Valley Road?
I have not.
You ever been to the Crocker Mansion?
No further.
Mr. Finkel said, "Thank you, Ms. Espinoza." Nothing.
The court said, cross-examination.
Cross-examination. By Mr. Skirek.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just briefly. Good to see you again, Ms. Espinoza. As we covered last time, you testified the government's lawyers asked you for the first time to testify in this case about 3 weeks ago. Right, maybe a little more.
Maybe 3 to 4 weeks ago.
And again, you didn't know anything about this case before the prosecutor asked you to testify.
I did not.
And again, as we covered, you weren't part of the FBI's investigative team on this matter.
Correct.
And you're not part of the prosecution team.
Correct.
And, in fact, as you testified on direct, you haven't really had any involvement in this case aside from your testimony and then your prep for the testimony. Right.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, just turning to the chart briefly, can you just tell me who created the first draft of the chart?
I believe it was a forensic accountant, not myself, another forensic accountant at the FBI.
And approximately when was that?
It was maybe 2 weeks ago.
And after that first draft, you and the government lawyers talked about the chart.
I think I may have received it at like maybe version 3 or 4. So I wasn't involved in the initial conversations.
In the earlier version. And after you received it in version 3 or 4. How many additional versions were there after that?
I believe this is version 5, 5 or 6, but I believe it's 5.
Fair enough. Let's just take a quick look at the chart. If we could pull it up, please. Government Exhibit C, 12. I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions. We can flip through this quickly. If we could please go to page 4, the title of this slide is Crane Advisory, I'm sorry. Withdrawn. Off to the right-hand side of this page in a box that's outlined in green it says Crane Advisory 7 accounts at 3 banks. Right.
Correct.
And this slide displays 2 signature cards at IDB Bank, right?
Yes.
And then 1 signature card from Signature Bank.
Yes.
Was there a third bank involved here?
Yes, there was.
And was that bank Morgan Stanley?
Yes, it was.
And how many accounts did Crane have at Morgan Stanley if you recall?
4 accounts.
And there aren't any signature cards from those accounts at Morgan Stanley displayed here, right?
Correct.
If we could please go to page 8. Now I believe you were asked this on direct. But you don't know what Lowell and Mitchell is, right?
I do not.
Do you know why it's receiving funds?
I do not.
So you don't know, for example, if Lowell and Mitchell is one of G Club's attorneys, right?
I do not know.
If we could go to slide 13, please. Now. This slide shows Lowell and Mitchell sending money to Hamilton Opportunity Fund SBC, right?
Yes, it does.
And you testified that you don't know what kind of fund Hamilton is, right?
I do not know what type of fund it is, no.
You don't know in whose name these funds are listed at Hamilton, right?
I believe we have signature cards on the next slide for them and the names that are listed.
So let me just rephrase that because the question may have been unclear. Within Hamilton, the entity. You don't know what account within Hamilton the funds are held, right, as opposed to the bank.
Yeah, I only know the bank account information.
Right. Yes. Thank you. That was the distinction I was trying to draw. Thank you. And if we could go to page 15, please. This slide shows an internal transfer within Signature Bank, right? Between one account for Hamilton to another account for Hamilton.
Yes, it's a transfer between the two accounts.
Right. So this isn't actually money leaving Silvergate Bank, right? In the last arrow between the two bottom boxes.
The last transfer is between Silvergate Bank to a Silvergate Bank account.
It's fair to call that an internal transfer, to not leaving the bank.
Yes, that's fair.
And this happens on December 2, 2021, right?
Yes.
And you don't know why, right?
Correct.
And you don't know, for example, the funds were initially directed to the wrong account.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?
You don't know if, for example, the funds were initially directed to the wrong account.
I do not know that.
If we could please turn to slide 20. And you testified on direct a moment ago that this is a HUD-1 form. Right.
Yes.
Is this form a standard government form in the purchase and sale of real estate to your knowledge?
I'm not sure whether it's a standard form or not.
Let's zoom in on the upper left. I believe it's D. This is a little bit of an eye test here. But I think it's the first box on the upper left. And it says Taurus Fund LLC. You see that?
Yes.
And do you have experience with real estate transactions as part of your work as a forensic accountant for the FBI?
I do.
And it's common, isn't it? In the purchase of higher-end real estate for the buyer to create an LLC to hold title.
I don't know if it's common or not.
If we could zoom in on what is to the right of that E, and it's a little blurry. Can you see there that the name of the seller appears to be Crocker Mansion Estate, LLC? A New Jersey limited liability company.
Yes.
And does that sort of indicate to you that the seller here too was an LLC?
Yes, the seller here is an LLC.
Mr. Skirik said, "No further questions at this time, Your Honor."
The court said redirect.
Mr. Finkel said, "Nothing, Your Honor." Thank you, Ms. Espinoza.
The court said you may step.
Witness excused.
The court said, the government may call its next witness.
Ms. Murray said, "Thank you, Your Honor." The government calls Jamie Wilson.
Jamie Wilson, called as a witness by the government, having been duly sworn, testified as follows.
The court said, please state your name and spell it.
The witness said, Jamie Wilson, Jamie. Wilson is Wilson.
The court said, you may inquire.
Ms. Murray said, "Thank you, Your Honor."
Direct examination. By Ms. Murray.
Good afternoon, Ms. Wilson.
Good afternoon.
Where are you employed?
I'm employed at the Bank of Princeton.
What is your title?
I am the BSA officer for the bank.
And what does BSA stand for?
BSA stands for the Bank Secrecy Act.
When did you become a BSA officer?
4 years ago.
What are your duties and responsibilities as a BSA officer?
My duties are to protect the financial institution and our financial industry from money laundering, terrorist financing, tax evasion.
Can you describe for the jury how, if at all, you monitor for your issues in the course of your BSA duties?
Yes. We have different ways of monitoring. We have a system that alerts us when people's activity goes outside of what you would consider normal for a personal account or a business account. We have ways of contacting law enforcement, can contact us through 314 as. We have 314 BS, which allows us to talk to other financial constitutions. We have different monthly and weekly reports where we monitor wires, monetary instruments. Any activity that comes in and out of a bank, we monitor it.
And you mentioned the 314B program. Can you explain in a bit more detail what that entails?
So 314B program is not all financial institutions are involved in it, but if you sign up, it allows you to talk to another bank about customers that you both have the same customer. So if I was a customer of financial institution A, and financial institution B also, I was a customer of that institution, we could talk about the activity going through our accounts in reference to money laundering and possible terrorist financing.
And how, if at all, does the 314B information sharing system assist you in doing your BSA monitoring?
That helps us put the bigger picture together. So if we're unsure where activity is coming from or the original source or where it is going to, it allows us the capability of finding out where that money originated from, if it was coming into ours or where it was going, and what it was used for if it goes somewhere else.
Ms. Wilson, are you familiar with the term qualifile?
Yes.
What is qualifile?
Qualifile is a report run on every individual in business that comes to a bank to open an account. And it's a check systems report that every single bank runs. And it allows you to see if somebody has a charge-off at another institution. So if they went in the negative at another bank, it would show us that they possibly owe that financial institution funds.
Are you familiar with the phrase OFAC?
Yes.
What does that stand for?
OFAC is the Office of Foreign Asset Control. And OFAC sends out multiple different types of lists that some people may be blocked or sanctioned. And you cannot transact with those individuals or businesses.
How, if at all, are the OFAC list relevant to your duties and responsibilities as a BSA officer?
If somebody hits the OFAC list, then we need to call OFAC, which is part of the U.S. Treasury, and either deny a transaction or potentially put it into a separate account and hold those funds.
Can you describe the average Bank of Princeton customer profile?
Yeah. The average Bank of Princeton can be anybody from what I would consider a blue-collar customer. So somebody possibly a mechanic or a military person to real estate agents or doctor's offices.
And how many branches are there of Bank of Princeton?
We have 26 branches.
Geographically speaking, where in the U.S. are those branches located?
They're located mostly in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. And just recently a couple in the outskirts of the New York, not within a city, but mostly New Jersey and Pennsylvania.
Ms. Wilson, did there come a time when you conducted a BSA review of an account held in the name of Lamp Capital?
Yes.
Approximately when was that?
Around September of 2020.
What, if anything, do you recall about that customer?
That customer came to us from a board member who met with an advisor and a financial advisor and a lawyer. And they were introduced together to bring money to our financial institution because they considered us more of a family bank still over the larger institutions.
Do you recall the name of that advisor who referred the account?
I believe the advisor Stephen Law Andy was the lawyer. And then Hatham Khalid was the advisor who brought the funds to us.
Who, if anyone, did the advisor say that he was working with in bringing the account to Bank of Princeton?
Mr. Barkan said, "Objection, hearsay."
The court said, sustained.
Do you recall whether there were any other individuals referenced in Lamp Capital?
When Lamp Capital was open, the signer on the account was another lawyer. Once we researched that name, Daniel Podhaski.
Ms. Wilson, when an account is open at Bank of Princeton, what information, if any, does the bank request of the potential customer?
We request, when it's a business account, we need 2 forms of business identification. Usually it's an SS4 which is given from the IRS that has their EIN number. And a EIN number is kind of like a person's social security number for a business. And then the other document would be their certificate of formation that's usually filed with the state. And all the IDs for the signers on the account.
And what, if anything, do you do with that information once you collect it?
We review it to make sure that it is a legitimate document so that they actually did file with the IRS. They did file with the different states. We review that the signers match the business documents that are being opened, and that even the signers' IDs are legitimate.
Did you conduct a BSA review of the LAMP Capital account?
Yes.
What, if anything, do you recall about that review?
The beneficial owners, which we also do, is the ultimate owner of the business. We reviewed those documents. The opening documents, which the signer on the account wasn't the owner of the business. So that was a bit of a red flag to us. And they happened to be a lawyer, not the actual signers. And the signers and owners of the business on the UBO form, which is the ultimate beneficial ownership form. They were an NRA, which is a non-resident alien, so not a US citizen. Which doesn't make it bad. It just makes it a little higher risk for us as the bank.
I want to discuss some of the characteristics of the LAMP Capital account based on your review. Do you recall the approximate dollar amount of that account?
Yes. When they opened it, they brought in around 10 million.
How, if at all? Did that compare to the dollar amount in other Bank of Princeton customer accounts that you reviewed?
Mr. Barkan said, objection, relevance.
Ms. Murray said, it goes to the risk rating that Ms. Wilson was just speaking about.
The court said, I'll allow the answer.
Without having a loan at the institution. I've never seen that kind of money brought in to open an account before. It was higher than our average clientele.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, there's a stipulation between the parties that I believe is in evidence. I'm going to confirm that. This is Government Exhibit Stip 14. It's a stipulation regarding bank records. And pursuant to this stipulation, at this time the government offers Government Exhibits GX, BOP 16, BOP 7, BOP 1, BOP 2, BOP 3, and BOP 4.
The court said, any objection?
Mr. Barkan said, no objection, Your Honor.
The court said, they are admitted.
Government's exhibits BOP 16, BOP 7, BOP 1, BOP 2, BOP 3, and BOP 4 received in evidence. By Ms. Murray.
Ms. Loftus, if we could please publish Government Exhibit BOP 16. Ms. Wilson, Bank of Princeton. Is that institution insured by any governing body?
The FDIC.
Can you explain what the FDIC is?
FDIC is the Federal Depository Institution. So they back our institution financially to cover the funds that are within our institution. And they also examine our bank to make sure we're in compliance at least every 18 months.
Ms. Loftus, we now have this up, if you could just flip through a few of the pages. Ms. Wilson. Generally speaking, do you recognize Government Exhibit BOP 16?
Yes, this is the account agreement, the opening documents.
If we could go to the first page, Ms. Loftus. For what account?
This is for LAMP Capital.
If we could zoom in all the way across the page, the top portion, please. Looking at the top right. Ms. Wilson, what is the date of this account agreement for LAMP Capital?
September 10th, 2020.
And over on the left a little bit below, what's the name of the signer?
Daniel Podhaski.
And under that there's the name LAMP Capital again. What is the text that's listed in the box below LAMP Capital?
The newly established company.
Ms. Loftus, if we could go to page 10, please. What is this document, Ms. Wilson?
This is the beneficial ownership document that shows that the ultimate beneficial owners of the business.
Who, if anyone, completes this document? Who provides the information reflected in this document?
The person opening the account.
Ms. Loftus, if we could zoom in please on the top portion through to the first table. Ms. Wilson. What's the name of the person opening this account?
Daniel Podhaski.
And in B, the legal entity for this account?
LAMP Capital.
Looking at section C, what is the name listed as the ultimate beneficial owner of LAMP Capital?
Changua.
Can you spell that?
Huang, last name is Guo.
Ms. Loftus, if we could zoom in. What is the address associated with Guo on this document?
It's 781 or 761, Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10002.
What type of passport does this individual hold according to this document?
A Hong Kong passport.
Ms. Loftus, can we go to page 15, please? Ms. Wilson, what type of document is this?
This is their limited liability company agreement, so it's a business document.
Why, if at all, does the Bank of Princeton collect business documents in the course of account openings?
To validate the business itself that it was formed. And within the businesses usually it tells you what type of business it is, who the signers of the business are.
What, if anything, do you look for in the course of your BSA review in collecting corporate documents like this?
When we collect corporate documents, we like to see when they were actually incorporated. Who the signers are, what type of business they are, anyone related to the business, where they're located. Were they actually registered of the business?
If we could focus on the top portion here, Ms. Loftus. What is the date based on this limited liability company agreement that LAMP Capital was created?
The 8th day of September 2020.
And what entity is listed as the sole member of that company?
Infinity Treasury Management Incorporated.
Ms. Loftus, if we could just briefly go back to page 1, please. Ms. Wilson. What was the date that Daniel Podhasky applied to open this bank account in the name of LAMP Capital?
September 10, 2020.
Ms. Loftus, let's go back to page 19, please, just the bottom of that corporate document. Ms. Wilson. Who signed the limited liability company agreement on behalf of Infinity Treasury Management?
Daniel Podhasky.
Ms. Loftus, can we go to page 33 now, please? What is this, Ms. Wilson?
That's the Qualifile report, the check systems report.
Can you describe what information is reflected on a Qualifile response?
So this is a report that's run on every business or individual opening an account. And that's run by every single bank. So when we look at this, it's telling us. Kind of gives you a suggestion whether to open or deny the account. And if somebody had recently opened accounts at other institutions or had charge-offs at other institutions, we would be able to see it here.
Can we go to the next page, please, Ms. Loftus? And if you could focus in on inquiry details down to the end of details too. If you could just explain a little bit of what information is on this report, Ms. Wilson.
Yeah. So that's where you can see where it says August 30th, 2020. Daniel Podhasky had also gone to Next Bank to inquire and open an account. So he got through the process of opening the account with their institution, whether they actually opened it or not. They probably did if they ran him. And then again you have Santander Bank on September 15th, 2020. He also went to that institution to inquire and open an account.
We can take that down, Ms. Loftus. Thank you. Were any LAMP Capital accounts opened at Bank of Princeton?
Yes.
Did there come a time when the LAMP Capital signer opened another account at Bank of Princeton?
Yes.
What was the name on that account?
Greenwich Land.
Approximately when was that Greenwich Land account opened?
That was also September of 2020.
Ms. Loftus, if we could please publish what's in evidence as Government Exhibit BOP 7. Ms. Wilson. What is this document?
That's the opening documents, the account agreement.
If we could focus on the top portion all the way across the top, please, Ms. Loftus. What is the date of this account opening document?
September 23, 2020.
And looking at the right, the account title and the individual associated with this account?
Greenwich Land, LLC, and Daniel Podhasky.
And then looking over on the left under owner/signer information. What is listed as the occupation for Daniel Podhasky?
Attorney.
If we could go to page 3, please, Ms. Loftus. Ms. Wilson, again, what is this type of document?
That's the ultimate beneficial ownership document.
If we could focus on the top portion, Ms. Loftus. In the table in item C, Ms. Wilson. Who is listed here as the beneficial owner of the Greenwich land?
Hing Chi-ngok.
All right. Ms. Loftus, if we could go to page 8, please. What type of record is this, Ms. Wilson?
That's the resolution for the business. And anybody opening the account are going to have authority over the account signs this.
Zoom out of that, Ms. Loftus, and go to the next page, and the next page. If we could focus on the top portion. On what date was this limited liability company established?
This was signed September 22, 2020.
And who signed on behalf of the company?
Daniel Podhasky.
So that's September 22, 2020. Ms. Loftus, can we go back to page 1, please? What was the date that Daniel Podhasky applied for the Greenwich Land Bank account at Bank of Princeton?
September 23, 2020.
Let's go to page 17, please, Ms. Loftus. Ms. Wilson. Is this the quali-file response for the Greenwich Land account?
Yes.
And going to the next page, page 18, if we could zoom in on the text here. How many inquiries were there that were relevant to the Greenwich Land Bank account?
4.
And can you read the dates and the banks that were associated with those inquiries?
Next Bank, Santander Bank, Signature Bank, and the Bank of Princeton.
Can you explain why, if at all, Bank of Princeton would appear on its own quali-file response?
They ran his name through quali-file on September 16 also, and then was running it again on September 23.
Ms. Loftus, can we go to page 23, please? What is this, Ms. Wilson?
That's a new account checklist that the branches fill out for the businesses to make sure that we have everything. As far as BSA goes and legal-wise goes, so we have the proper documents for businesses and individuals.
If we can go to the next page, please, Ms. Loftus. Looking about halfway down the page in bold, there's an if other field, if we could zoom in on that. Ms. Wilson. What information does this form reflect about the type of business that Greenwich Land was?
Capital management.
All right. Ms. Loftus, we can take that down. Ms. Wilson, in the course of your duties as a BSA officer, did you monitor the Lamp Capital and the Greenwich Land accounts after they were opened?
Yes.
What, if anything, did you observe about the activity in those accounts?
The activity coming in both accounts were funded with a higher than normal amount of money than I've seen at the Bank of Princeton in my 11 years there. And then the money that started going out of the accounts were not really in line with what we thought a capital management or a real estate business should. Or wasn't in line of what I've seen or would be typical for that type of business.
What type of activity did you observe that in your opinion wasn't in line with typical activity?
The funds going out, there were 2 large checks to the beneficial owners. One from each of the businesses to the beneficial owners of those businesses. They went to car dealerships, wineries. A yacht, not in line with just that business.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, pursuant to the stipulation GX Stip 14, I also offer Government Exhibit GX, BOP 12 and GX, BOP 10.
The court said, No objection.
Mr. Barkan said, No objection, Your Honor.
The court said, They are admitted.
Government's exhibits BOP 12 and BOP 10 received in evidence. By Ms. Murray.
Ms. Loftus, if we can please publish GX BOP 12. Ms. Wilson, while we're pulling that up. Did you observe any OFAC hits in the Greenwich Land or the Lamp Capital accounts?
No OFAC matches.
Ms. Wilson, what is this?
That's a bank statement.
Looking at the top, for what account is the bank statement?
For Lamp Capital, LLC.
And the statement ending date on the top right?
10/30/020.
If we could focus on the summary of accounts down to the bottom of the page, please, Ms. Loftus. Looking at the summary of accounts, Ms. Wilson. What was the ending balance for this pay period for this LAMP capital statement?
$4,230,400.
And I want to look at a view of the different transactions that are reflected here. Under other credits, the second entry there, what is the date of that incoming wire?
October 15, 2020.
From a bank account held in the name of what entity?
Savio Law, LLC.
And the amount of that incoming wire into the LAMP capital account?
$5 million.
And if we could go to page 3 please, Ms. Loftus. Focus in on the content on the top. Looking at the third item here, Ms. Loftus, what is the date of that outgoing wire?
October 29, 2020.
Where does it go?
Moran Yacht Management Incorporated.
What is the dollar amount of that outgoing wire from the LAMP capital account?
$272,525.
Ms. Loftus, we can take that down, and let's put up Government Exhibit BOP 10, please. What is this? Ms. Wilson?
It's another bank statement.
For what account?
Greenwich Land.
And what is the statement sending date?
October 30, 2020.
Again, if we could focus in here on the top portion from summary of accounts through to the bottom. What was the ending balance in the Greenwich Land account on October 30, 2020?
Almost $10 million.
And looking at the incoming wires listed here, if we could just take them one at a time. The three of those incoming wires, the date, where it came from, and the dollar amount?
Yep, October 15, 2020, there's an incoming wire from Savio Law, LLC for $5 million. On October 21, 2020, there's an incoming wire from ACA Capital Group, Ltd. for $999,893.22, and on October 23, 2020, another incoming wire from ACA Capital Group for almost $4 million.
And then, if we could look at the bottom of this portion, other debits. The second to the last debit reflected there, if you could read that that's October 26th.
An outgoing wire to Sherry Lehman, Inc. for $32,220.
Do you know what type of company or business Sherry Lehman, Inc. is?
I don't remember exactly what their business was.
If we could take that down, Ms. Loftus, and show the witness what's marked as Government Exhibit BOP 40. Ms. Wilson, do you recognize this?
That's an email.
If we could scroll through the pages, Ms. Loftus. Have you seen this email before, Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Did you receive this email?
Yes.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, the government offers Government Exhibit BOP 40.
Mr. Barkan said, no objection, Your Honor.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit BOP 40 received in evidence.
Ms. Murray said, and we can publish that. Starting at the top, and then we'll kind of work our way through the chain, Ms. Wilson. What is the date of the top portion of this email chain?
December 18, 2020.
And this is an email from you to whom?
From me to my assistant BSA officer.
What is the subject of the full email chain here?
Incoming wires for Greenwich Land.
And there's an attachment to this email. What is the title of that attachment?
Loan Agreement ACA vs. Greenwich, need to sign PDF.
Let's go to page 3, Ms. Loftus. Focusing on the email that begins about a third of the way down of the page, who is Miriam Cologne?
She was the branch manager for our New Brunswick office.
What is the date of this outgoing email from Miriam Cologne?
November 19, 2020.
Who is it sent to?
Hatham Khalid and Daniel Podhaski.
What's the domain name of the email address for Hatham Khalid?
Crane Advisory Group.
Do you know what Crane Advisory Group is?
That was the investment advisory firm that he worked for.
And what about the email domain for Daniel Podhaski?
It was Lamp Capital.
So if you could read just the first 2 lines of this email from Miriam Cologne. Actually the first 3 lines of the email.
Good morning, gentlemen. Hope your day is going well. My compliance department is conducting a retrospective review of this payment.
Now there's text that's in black and there's text that's in red. Do you see that?
Yes.
If we could zoom out, Ms. Loftus, and go up just a few pages, and look at the bottom of this first page. If we could zoom in, Ms. Loftus. Who is this email from?
That's from Daniel Podhasky.
On what date?
On December 2nd, 2020.
Who does he send it to?
To Miriam Cologne, the branch manager, and copied Haytham Khalid.
And the content of this email reads, "Hi, Miriam. I have put the requested information below in red. And the requested supporting documentation is attached. Do you see that?"
Yes.
Let's go back to page 3, please, Ms. Loftus. I'd to zoom in on that email. Ms. Wilson. What information was Bank of Princeton requesting from Lamp Capital in item 1 here?
We were trying to find out ACA Capital Group's business activities, their contact information, their physical address, phone number, so who ACA Capital was, and more information about that business.
Why, if at all, were you requesting additional information about that business?
Because they had sent a high amount of funds into the Bank of Princeton to a new client of ours.
And looking at item 2 here, the request from Miriam Cologne is: please provide organization structure chart for ACA Capital Group Limited, and indicate beneficial owners. What was the response from Lamp Capital to that request?
They were not in possession of that information.
Looking at item 3, where the Bank of Princeton requests the industry that Greenwich Land is operating, and additional identifying details. Can you read the text in red, which is the response from Greenwich Land?
Greenwich Land is a real estate holding company incorporated for the purpose of owning and managing real estate assets. The physical address is 667 Madison Avenue, 5th floor, New York, New York, 10065. It's a privately owned entity that is not marketing to the public, and therefore does not currently have a website. The phone number is 917-225-8178. The email address is danielp@lampcapital.org. Greenwich Land's beneficial owner is Hing Chi Ngok.
And then in item 4, which requests the relationship between ACA Capital Group and the beneficiary Greenwich Land LLC, what is the response from the customer there?
ACA is a lender and Greenwich Land is the borrower.
If we can zoom out, Ms. Loftus, and focus on the response for 5 into the next page. So detail purpose down through the end. Ms. Wilson, Miriam Cologne's requests the purpose of the following payments. On October 20, 2020, a payment in the amount of $999,913.22. Is that the payment we just looked at that was reflected in the account statement?
Yes.
And the second payment that Miriam Cologne is requesting information for, what payment is that?
On October 22, 2020, in the amount of $3,999,935. That was another payment from ACA that we just saw on the statement.
And looking then further down the email, the bank requests documentation. What response does Greenwich Land give in response to that request?
Both transactions are part of a loan agreement. Please see attached loan agreement.
Now, the bank requests the information within 14 days. Do you see that?
Yes.
Ms. Loftus, let's look again at what the date was of the request was of Ms. Cologne.
November 19, 2020.
And we can zoom out and just scroll up the chain. Stop there for a moment so we can see this email. On November 24, 2020. There's an outgoing email from Miriam Cologne. What does that email say?
Following up. Hope your day is going well. Please see email sent on November 18th. I need to respond to my compliance department on this. Can you please provide information requested?
And we can zoom out, Ms. Loftus, and go up again. On what date does Daniel Podhasky respond to Miriam Cologne?
On the 24th he said, "Thanks for following up. We'll get back shortly."
And then what happens on December 1st, 2020?
She requested a follow-up again.
And scroll up please, Ms. Loftus. And then looking here at the bottom of page 1. On what date does Daniel Podhasky provide the requested information?
December 2nd.
If we could look at the top of this page please, Ms. Loftus. In particular the email that you write Ms. Wilson. What do you write in your email here?
This is for Greenwich Land and the relationship between ACA Capital. These are the answers we received from the customer. I wanted to follow up on the information. We could go over it on Monday when I got back with my assistant.
We can zoom out, and let's look at the attachment to this email, Ms. Loftus. It's a few pages down. If we could zoom in on the top portion here. Ms. Wilson. Is this a document that Daniel Podhasky provided to the bank in response to its inquiry?
Yes.
What is the title of this document?
Loan agreement.
What is the date of the agreement?
October 16, 2020.
And who are the parties, looking first at Party 1?
ACA Capital Group and Greenwich Land, LLC.
Let's zoom out, please, Ms. Loftus. And focus on the loan, which is item 2 here. Ms. Wilson. In the first sentence of this paragraph, what is the loan amount for this loan agreement?
$5 million.
We can zoom out again, Ms. Loftus. Can we scroll down, please? Is there one more page, or is that the end? We can zoom in on the signature lines, please. What entity is listed as signing on behalf of ACA Capital Group Limited?
Celestial Tide Limited.
And how is Celestial Tide Limited described?
The director of ACA Capital Group Limited.
All right. Ms. Loftus, we can take that down. Ms. Wilson. Did there come a time when a company called G Club Operations applied to open an account at Bank of Princeton?
Yes.
Approximately when was that?
That was at the end of September, beginning of October.
Of what year?
2020.
How, if at all, did you become aware of that account application?
They were also brought to us from the same investment advisor.
Did you conduct a BSA review of that account?
Yes.
What, if anything, do you recall about the G Club account opening materials?
The opening documents, they had formed them in Puerto Rico. The business formation was in Puerto Rico. And they had an address listed in Puerto Rico and in New York. They had their SS4. But none of the signers that were going to be on the business account were on the business formation documents. And the beneficial open was a non-resident alien.
You said SS4, what does that refer to?
SS4 is their EIN number. So it's a letter from the IRS assigning an EIN number to the business. Such as you get your social security number. That's their sole identifier.
Ms. Loftus, can we please publish Government Exhibit BOP1? Ms. Wilson. Is this the account agreement for that account you just mentioned, G Club Operations?
Yes.
Can we focus on the top portion, Ms. Loftus, on the left side? What is the full name of the institution for this account?
G Club Operations, LLC.
And what is the address listed for G Club Operations, LLC?
590, Madison Avenue, 21st floor, New York, New York, 10022.
Now there's a handwritten annotation under that address. Do you see that?
Yes.
What does it say?
Correct address.
Ms. Loftus, if we can please pull up alongside this what's in evidence as Government Exhibit SW, 2009. If we could zoom in on the top portion from through to the address that's listed there as sender. Ms. Wilson. Do you see to whom this email on the right side was sent?
Hatham K. at craneadvisorygroup.com.
To whom is it addressed?
To Yvette Wang.
And looking on the right there, there's a field called Center. Do you see that?
I'm sorry. Say that again.
Sure. There's transaction for the value. There are a few fields under transaction details. What is listed under center?
New York, New York, City, 590, Madison Avenue, 590, Madison Avenue, New York City 10022.
And 2 lines down, what is the authorization date associated with that transaction?
October 14, 2020.
Keeping that up, Ms. Loftus. Looking on the left at the Bank of Princeton account agreement for G Club operations. If we could focus on the owner/signer information there. Who is listed as the owner/signer of this account?
Yvette Wang.
And the address that we just went over on the top here that's listed. Is that the same address that's listed on the document on the right?
Yes.
If we could zoom out of that, Ms. Loftus, and we'll just focus again on BOP1. We can take down SW, 2009. Let's go to page 3, please, focus on the top portion. Actually, all the way down to the bottom of the text here. This is on the bottom right. Ms. Wilson, what is the date the account was opened?
October 30th, 2020.
On the top left, what is the name of the second signer on this account?
Alex Hadjikaralambis.
And what is Alex Hadjikaralambis' occupation listed as here?
Comptroller.
Let's go to page 8, please, Ms. Loftus. Again, Ms. Wilson, what type of document is this?
That's the Limited Liability Company Authorization Resolution.
And looking here, for what company?
For G Club operations.
And what is the address listed for G Club operations on this corporate document?
590, Madison Avenue, 21st floor, New York, New York, 10022.
And do you see the 2 signers here on the account?
Yvette Wang and Alex H.
Are those the same signers who were listed above in the account opening documentation?
Yes.
Let's go to page 13, please. If we could focus, Ms. Loftus, on that portion down to the bottom. What is the name of this scanned passport?
Yanping Wang.
And what is the issuing country of this passport?
China.
And then, if we could focus on the handwritten information on the bottom here, Ms. Loftus. What does that say, Ms. Wilson?
Second form of ID, Occupation Manager.
Let's go to the next page, page 14. What is this an image of, Ms. Wilson?
A credit card.
Why, if at all? Would Bank of Princeton collect a scan of a credit card in connection with an account opening?
That can be used as a second form of ID for an individual.
And what is the individual's name listed on this credit card?
Golden Spring, New York. And it's Yanping Wang.
Let's go to page 21, please. Again, Ms. Wilson. Is this the beneficial owner certification for the G Club operations account?
Yes.
And looking through to the table, the person opening the account listed as Alex H., correct?
Correct.
And then the name and address of the legal entity is the same as we've been looking at in the account opening documentation?
Yes.
What is the name of the ultimate beneficial owner of G Clubs according to this document?
He, Howren.
Can you spell that?
H-E, last name is H-R-N.
And looking at the address field, can you read that address?
79, East Works Drive, Cofton, Hackett, UK.
At the bottom, if we could focus on the portion through to the date. What date was this form submitted?
October 29, 2020.
And this is a corporate document for G Clubs that was provided to Bank of Princeton, is that correct?
Yes, this is a form the bank gives them to fill out to explain who their beneficial owners are.
And, Ms. Loftus, if we can go to page 25. Ms. Wilson, what type of document is this?
This is a certificate of organization for the business for G Club.
Looking at this, where was G Club organized?
Puerto Rico.
And on what date?
October 7, 2020.
The court said, "All righty. It's now 3 p.m., so our work has come to an end for the day. Members of the jury, remember that you're not allowed to discuss the case amongst yourselves, or with anyone else. Don't permit anyone to discuss the case in your presence. Don't read, watch, or listen to anything from any source about anything having to do with the subject matter of this trial. Have a good evening. I'll see you ready to come into the courtroom tomorrow at 9:30. Thank you.
The law clerk said, jury exiting.
Jury not present.
The court said you may step out. Don't discuss your testimony.
Witness temporarily excused. Continued on next page. Jury not present.
The court said, please be seated. Who do we expect to testify tomorrow?
Ms. Murray said, so we'll be continuing with Ms. Wilson and then we will have Sam Roberts, who is a BitGo employee that we discussed earlier. And then Bo Collins. And with respect to Mr. Collins, we don't anticipate that we will get past his direct examination tomorrow. But with respect to the issue we had flagged this morning on the documents, we've spoken with defense counsel. And our proposal, if it's acceptable to the court, in the very unlikely event that we did complete his direct examination tomorrow, we would request to then adjourn for the day to give the defense the benefit of the weekend to prepare his cross. Again, I think it's extremely unlikely that will be the timeline. I suspect he will still be on direct when the day ends.
The court said, anything else?
Ms. Murray said, nothing from the government.
The court said, all righty. Thank you. Please have the witness on the stand at 9:29 tomorrow. Have a good evening.
Adjourned to June 14, 2024 at 9 a.m.